Good evening and welcome to the October 5th meeting of the Lake Forest Building Review Board. I'm Ted Notes, Chairman of the Building Review Board. At this time, I'd like to ask members of the board to introduce themselves. Starting on my right, Jim.
Jim Diamond.
Ross Friedman.
Michael Black.
Robert Rita.
Fred Moyer.
The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows Lake Forest residents and businesses to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not be fully resolved by city staff. It's important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without any need for board review. Thus, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve this goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined on the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also being broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. Our next order of business is to approve the minutes from September 7th. Has everyone had a chance to review, and is there any comment or amendment? Okay, do I hear a
Make a
motion?
motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion to approve the minutes for September 7th is hereby approved. Next on our agenda is the continued consideration of a request for approval of signage for a new business, Life Working at 717 Forest Avenue. If whoever is representing the petitioner would kindly introduce yourselves. And before we get started, are there any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest? Okay, with that, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Steve Whittington, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you, Mr. Chairman, board, staff, and community members. I am going to bring up my presentation. So I'm here for take two of our exterior signage petition, and I want to take a very quick opportunity to share an update from when I was here last month. Last month I shared what we would look like. This month I'm sharing what we do look like. We had our grand opening on Monday. On Monday the 3rd, with the mayor, some members of city council, and this is Life Working, co-working of Lake Forest in business. To specifically address the areas of focus and the advice that we got from last month, the exterior signage that we're looking at, and it was great. I should say it was great advice that we got. What we did to change what we had originally positioned was the original signage was a white background, vinyl appliance. We modified the background or the field of the signage to be brushed aluminum versus the white vinyl. The horizontal dimension has been reduced, and that was a suggestion that came from the last meeting as well. It actually better focus on our logo, and we reduced the field from 24 inches to 20 on the horizontal dimension. The vertical dimension is 68 inches as was originally presented. We have also, again, we're not using vinyl, we're using acrylic letters, and we're going to give the dimensionality that was requested, and those are half-inch deep vertical letters. And you can see again in the upper right corner the perspective of the signage. It's double-sided, and to review again, it will be placed on the corner of 717 Forest Avenue, the intersection of the intersection of Westminster and Forest, to be visible on both streets. I want to share a perspective, and I know several board members had the opportunity to see a poorly rendered foam core sign that I displayed at 545 today. But you can see, and I see it's a little bit difficult, but we wanted to give the perspective of that sign up against the facade of this building. It would begin where the brick and the stone meet, and then it's about 5.5 feet high, and that's the perspective that would have against the side of the building. A little bit better perspective than we were able to share when I was here last time. And just to demonstrate the signage, the second sign that we're going to have on the exterior to the left of the entrance of 717 Forest hasn't changed, but we wanted to basically reiterate that it shows as a gray background. What this is also brushed aluminum, so that it pops a little bit more on the side of the building, and it marries now completely with the sign that's on the corner. And the last thing that I would like to share is thank you for the consideration. And tomorrow evening from 5 to 7, we have another showcase event to the public, entrepreneurism in the community. And we would invite anybody from the board, the staff, and the community that would like to come and see our space.
Great, thank you
Any
very much.
questions? Yep.
Kathy and Kate, any direction that you'd like us to consider?
Thank you, Chairman Notes. Not much to add. When you last saw this petition, you endorsed the general concept of a vertical sign. You recognize that the building is unique in its form, and in fact, the business itself is unique. The petitioner did respond to a number of concerns that were raised. As was mentioned, the letters on the vertical sign are now dimensional. The background of the sign has been reduced. The two signs are consistent with respect to materials. And the white background color of the vertical sign was also eliminated. Again, many of you had an opportunity to view a mock-up of the sign earlier this evening. Staff does recommend approval. We will certainly work with the petitioner on any final placement or any minor adjustments that need to be made. We do recommend approval.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Fred?
Well, I don't have any questions. Since I'm speaking, I will say that I think you've made some great changes. It's responded to some of the comments that were made here at the last meeting, and maybe independent of those even, you've made changes. But I think you've made great progress.
Thank you, sir.
I agree. I was out there today. Thank you for doing that for us. We really appreciate the response that you gave us. The only question I have is the smaller word co-working. Is that going to be on the interior to the building side? And the only reason I say that, when I look at your slide A and side A, side B, I don't know if you want to take a look real quick. It just looks weird to me. Yeah, pick it right there. Look at the top right. So if the side A right there, if the posts were on the right side,
Correct.
against the building, looks
Yeah,
okay.
Side A is misrepresented. Co-working would be against the post on
Okay,
both
all right,
sides.
all
No,
right.
that's well said. If you read it down, life working from the top, co-working on the inside.
Okay, great. That's it. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
I don't have any questions. I saw the mock-up out there. I thought it looked nice. So I don't have any questions.
This is a question that, had I been here last month, I would probably not have to ask, but as I wasn't, I'm going to take this opportunity. I was surprised that the sign is so high up, and I don't know if city staff can comment on the placement of it. I'm just concerned, as you look at the trees that are around it, could it be blocking it? Is there a reason it's not lower where it might be more visible to a pedestrian?
I think in the final sighting, we'll probably be on site and coordinate the exact height. But the idea really was, with the verticality of the sign and the height, to really make it intuitive that the space is on the second floor. It's unusual that we have a business in the central business district that takes up the whole second floor. So I think you're right. We don't want it so high that it doesn't catch the eye. So I think we'll probably play with that a little bit.
I concur with my colleagues. With regard to the height, though, I do think that it should be carefully placed relative to the existing masonry, so there's some adjacency alignment, so that aesthetically it makes sense as well. Is the thickness, the overall thickness, 1 1/8 inches? Am I reading that correctly?
The overall thickness of the sign itself, correct. 2 by 2 square. No. Let me look. My eyes aren't what they used to be. I will confirm that. I believe that to be the case, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Yes.
I concur with all of my colleagues. Looks great. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
I agree as well, and thanks for being so flexible and working with us going forward. I think it looks really good now, so
Thank you.
appreciate your understanding.
I think it's better as well.
Right. Any other questions or comments for staff or the petitioner? Okay. With that, I'd like to invite anybody who's in attendance with us tonight, if you have anything you'd like to address. Seeing nothing, I bring this back to the board for discussion and a motion.
I move to approve the petition as submitted, subject to the findings in the staff report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, congratulations, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the consideration of a request for approval of additions and alterations to the existing residence at 171 Stone Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just point out, our firm did a plat survey for the seller of this property, but I am not involved with the petitioner at all, and so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And the other thing is, I wasn't at this August meeting, but I did review the videotape, so I'm familiar with it.
Does anyone have any concerns? Oh.
Are we on?
I'm sorry. Pardon me, Lori, I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead. Getting ahead of myself. Sorry about that.
I'll leave them there.
You're ready for when we call you. You can leave those up there if you'd like. Thanks, Russ. All right, backing up. Continued consideration of a request, I'm sorry, we covered that. Continued consideration of a request for approval of a new single-family residence, overall site plan and landscape plan on a vacant lot at 980 Walden Lane. My apologies for jumping over you. Any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest? Okay,
I
great.
just stated mine.
Hearing none, when the petitioner is ready, please identify yourself and welcome.
My name is Robert Nyland. I'm the architect for the project.
Alan Payton, general contractor.
And Rob Schwartz, landscape architect with Mariani Landscape.
So for the benefit of those of you who weren't here, and just to review what was submitted in August, this is a rendering of the front of the building. We had several comments from the committee, and we tried to address them. Well, the items that we were hoping to satisfy the committee's displeasure with was principally the elevation of the house above grade. So we've gone ahead and lowered it so that the finished floor is only 1 foot above grade. We removed the stone base. We added shutters to the front wings. We raised the window height at the front wings as well. In this particular rendering, we also tried it in clapboard and tried a very different architectural style, and a very straight colonial. In presenting this to the Vances, they really expressed a desire to keep with a red brick house. So we changed our submittal to be back to red brick. I'll get to the elevations in a second. We addressed the, we addressed the concerns about the safety of the driveway by rotating the garage so that it didn't directly face the street, but angled closer to the street to make the approach in and out of the garage slots more easily maneuvered. We did need to keep with the attached garage due to the owner's need to have a direct attachment. Other things that really were not in play was the owner really liked the general layout of the house, the way the circulation patterns worked, the adjacencies of the rooms, the one-story layout, given that it's far more accessible. And they really liked the feature of the interior courtyard flanked by the two wings of the house. So while I thought there was some suggestion by the board that the layout be a little less formal and more asymmetrical, the owners were really quite happy with this layout, and it was very hard to change it from that. So the overall floor plan is quite similar to what was presented in August, the main difference being the angled garage. The elevations have been altered significantly. As mentioned before, the first floor has been lowered to being 1 foot above grade. The stone base has been removed. We did go back to raising the windows at the wings due to the owner's request, and frankly, our belief that it was a better, more authentic look. The need to have it as a one-story building really pushed the design to either be early colonial revival or Greek revival. We removed the balustrades at the request of the committee, taking it a bit away from Greek revival and closer to colonial. To further move in that direction, we changed the railings from wooden railings to ornamental metal. We also removed the railings from the garage for similar reason. Here's the landscape plan.
So the landscape plan is relatively similar to what was presented in August, with the accommodation of the additional garage, or the garage turned at the left-hand side, and therefore the driveway was modified. We added a, how do you do the pointer? Is it?
Yes, it's right on the edge.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if you can. So at the, oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to go back to that one. Sorry. So at the end of the driveway, we added a hammerhead, which was respectful of. That's a pull-out. So when backing out of the driveway, out of the garage, it'll be very easy to maneuver. We also, upon staff's request, we had some turning radius analysis done, which we have as part of this presentation. But the overall scheme of the land, it's very pastoral. The ravines are surrounding the sides, and there's a real woody quality to the overall setting, with a clearing for the home. Reading some of the feedback from staff, there was concern originally about the removal of trees. I went in and because we had hired a certified arborist to do that, I went in and I looked at everything carefully, and I was having questions with the authenticity of it. So I asked the city forester, Mike Glomsky, to meet me, and we looked at it together, and we were both in agreement that it was problematic. So the person who did that is no longer with that company, and the owner of that company, certified arborist, came and redid it. So the quality of the trees that would be proposed to be removed, instead of being good and very good, are really fair and poor, and predominantly it's on the lower right-hand side. Oh, can you change, please? I wanted to address also the proximity of driveway, because there is concern about distance, and this is the Vance's current home. They've been a longtime client of Mariani. On the bottom to the right, it's only 28 feet from the garage to where they have the screening, and I think the screening of arborvitaes are very effective at, from the neighbor standpoint, to not even see it. You can see the neighbor to the right, their garage, and so that was very effective. I also wanted to kind of paint the picture with the driveway that's proposed. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, it shows a granite cobble, and we would have a granite cobble that would be set vertically to form a curb through the drive. So there's similar aspects to this. You can see they've invested greatly in their landscape over the years, and have a real appreciation for doing it properly. Can you change to the next one, please? I'll go back one. Also, to respond to the staff's concerns about the openness, and I guess feedback from the community as well, or at least from one resident about the openness. This is something that is for discussion. It's a way to kind of make it feel more woodsy, like actually taking the ravines and that wooded quality and putting it in the front. There are some key specimen trees, a couple of Kentucky coffee trees and a maple that we want to preserve, but also we can kind of fill that in to create more of that woodland element, which the board had shared was kind of the quality of Walden Lane. So we're trying to bring that essence about. And if you look in the upper left corner there, also show the opportunity to put in some evergreens in more of a naturalistic formation that would replicate the privacy that's occurring currently at the Vance's home. So those elements we thought could help alleviate some of the concern about, even though there's a natural clearing for this home to be built, the concern of it being kind of just too exposed. This could alleviate that somewhat. And then the next page, please. And this is we have 3 illustrations of the turning study that was done by the engineering firm that shows that it can be done fairly easily. And we want it to be easy for the Vances, so that clearly it's in everybody's best interest. And what we like to do with our clients is actually to drive it. So if we found that it's a little bit tight, we can expand. We have room to expand to the left to make it a little bit bigger. But from what we do as designers, landscape architects, this falls right within our comfort level, and it's actually a lot larger than what the Vances currently are maneuvering. So that's the presentation.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, great. Kathy and Kate, any guidance is welcome.
Thank you. The board saw this petition in August, at which point it was continued due to some concerns about the design of the home fitting onto that streetscape. Since that time, for the last couple of months, staff has been able to verify the steep slope setback. The city engineer has approved the location of the house, so that is not a concern. We are also able to verify the tableland in the building scale calculation, and the proposed home is under the allowable square footage. As the petitioner explained, the tree survey was updated. Our city arborist has concurred with the revised tree survey. So it does appear that the majority of the trees proposed for removal are in fair to poor condition. So replacement inches will be required for some of the trees, but the tree removal and the amount of tree removal is not so much of a concern at this point. So the main concern that staff still has is with the design of the home, the number of materials still, and how it really interacts and kind of sets into that existing streetscape. We did receive another piece of correspondence from a neighbor with similar concerns. The Preservation Foundation has also issued a letter supporting staff's recommendation. So at this point, we feel that the changes made aren't fully responsive to the board's comments and directions from the previous meeting. So we are recommending it be continued to allow more time for some refinements and some adjustments. Thank you.
Kate. Peter.
If I can just ask, because unfortunately I wasn't here in August, the concerns now are on the materials being used within Walton Lane is in keeping with the neighbors' homes?
The materials proposed are high quality, so staff has no concerns with that. There was a concern about the number of materials. So there are quite a few materials for the exterior listed in the staff report. So the combination of all the exterior materials were a concern.
Okay. Gentlemen, are you aware of this concern and you've addressed the?
I am. I just want to clarify a couple things. We did remove the limestone base, and so currently we have unpainted brick. We have the
Can I interrupt
painted
for just one
windows.
second? Do you
Yeah.
have any sort of demonstration that shows the facade in color that you could reference as you're going through this?
Well, we have the white one that we tried with the clapboard.
But anything that demonstrates what you're proposing?
Well, I think, well, close. By the time this came around with advances saying that, no, they'd want to go back to brick, there was no time to do another one. So if we assumed it was this house, as Robert was saying, it would be red brick, which I have brought right there at the foot of the railing. The metal roof, which is also, has a sample, and then wood windows, wood doors. So,
Excuse me, can you move forward and speak in the microphone? They can't hear you on.
And also introduce yourself if you could.
yeah, Alan Payton. It would seem, I think, to us that we probably have three materials now. We have wood, which would be all the trim, the wood windows. We have a metal roof, and we have a brick exterior. So, if there are any I'm forgetting,
Downspouts?
Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more. In the pediments, we were going to use authentic plaster stucco. That would be very smooth. So, rather than a painted wood or something like that, which would fail over time pretty quickly. So.
We'll also have limestone trim around the windows.
No, we got rid of all of that. If we put the elevations up, you still have them? Okay, around the windows only.
And how about the shutters? The shutters?
Well, the shutters would
They're
go
black
away.
there. Are they going to remain black?
Here's the latest elevation, and I'll let Robert speak from here, but.
So there is, we eliminated the shutters. We have the painted windows with a limestone frame around it, that is correct. What we did eliminate was the limestone base. I think there was some concern that it was imposing and too formal. So we try to lighten up the appearance. I think the same goes for removing any kind of balustrade from the limestone balustrade from the front, changing the railing over the entry to being a very light metal ornamental rail as opposed to the heavier wood look. And at one point we did have a railing over the garage, which we're clearly de-emphasizing the garage in both scale and orientation. So I guess I thought we had addressed some of the material concerns, and the only thing in play here might be the limestone frames, because all the other materials are essential for, creating the building envelope.
I guess, no, I think I'm finished. Thank you.
Right. Jim?
Did you actually bring samples of any of the material?
Yeah, I've got it right here.
I think just
Or
right in the
just hold them
center.
up.
Yeah.
The roof color, the brick.
And the window color is going to be
White
white. The rail on top of the,
would be black.
it appears to be very busy up there. Do you have a better look
It's
at that?
actually a replica of a historic home in Atlanta by a very famous classical architect, Neil Reed. And what makes it look busy in an elevation but extremely light, and I apologize, I don't have a photo of it with me. What makes it light in appearance is that rather than using sort of standard 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch square metal balustrades. They're very, very fine 1/4 inch balustrades. So it's a very light, transparent design. And when you render that in a small scale with heavy black lines, I mean, it's as light as we could print it. It does turn rather black. I agree with you. I will bring a photo.
Please. All right, thank you.
Russ? I'll come back to you.
No, just gathering my thoughts here, thanks.
Pass.
So numerous changes have been made, thank you for that. Still see quite a bit of grade change on this property. Approximately how many feet from the front of the home to the rear of the home does the grade change? Does it drop? It's hard for me to determine that from the...
So you're referring to streetscape to the rear?
Well, they're from the front of the home to the rear. Are you
They're
leveling?
represented by these 3 contour lines. So there's a 3-foot drop to allow the terrace to be in direct communication with the ground. Other than that, this is the existing grades. And of course, we have a dramatic drop off here at the ravine.
Is there an existing grade change from left to right? I think that would be, what,
There
west
is
to east?
I believe it's a 1-foot difference from along the street line.
No, it's 10 feet.
It's what?
10 feet. Left to right.
Left to right at the street?
Yeah.
Oh, at the street, yeah,
The
it's
street
greater.
from
The street dips
120
down
feet,
quite a
it's
bit.
about 10 feet.
10 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good slope.
You're doing a lot of filling here.
Not really. I think
Well, we have a basement, a partial basement. You know, we're not pushing the allowable square footage at all. We have a basement under this side and the center. So with the amount of fill from that, we should be at a fairly good balance.
Do you have an image of the original home that was presented to us in August that you can juxtapose to the current elevation?
Yeah, that was the, this.
Can we you don't have a comparative side-by-side, right?
Well, we have the, no, we don't. Just that.
But when you go back and forth between the two, sorry, I think you can see how much this one drops. And whereas this one was raised out of the ground 2 or
Right.
3 feet.
Right.
Especially if you look at the stoop, you can see the number of risers and treads.
Right.
And if you flip back to the current one, you can see we're very low in profile.
And this is it's very close to what the existing grade is now from the house that was removed, I think it was about 10 years ago.
Did you have, it's apparent that the garage presents problems in terms of its compatibility and functionality, and frankly, I think it still presents problems. It's
Well,
somewhat odd in relationship to the home.
yeah, the way we tried to address it was that if this was a historic home, you know, dating back to the original style, there wouldn't be a garage, and that the garage would have been an outbuilding added later. So we tried to treat it as such, meaning it doesn't match the height, it doesn't match the geometry. There's a clear hierarchy of the main house and the orthogonal geometry, and the garage being off to the side. But we did have to accommodate the owner's desire to have an attached garage, and we also had to accommodate the drive and the turnaround, which was of concern last time because of the drop-off. So we were trying to address the concerns with that by making it both functional, but also de-emphasizing the face of the garage as opposed to making the garage face the street directly.
Can we go back to the landscape plan, please?
Sure. Okay.
Actually, thank you for the opportunity. I had forgotten to mention at the intersection between the home and the garage, there's a specimen tree. I envision that's a low-branched ornamental that would hold its leaves very late into the year, something like a beech tree or a carpinus, or it could be a combination of evergreens, like a specimen single evergreen. But the intention there, there's a service door off of the garage, and the focus is really the front entry and the grandeur of the home, and very subordinate to the overall structure is the garage, with the combination of screening from the street and that key specimen tree in between the two. I really think it's going to be like not very noticeable at all. It's the focus is the front door.
And just to go back to a word that was used at the August meeting, the term organic. I mean, I recognize what we had presented before was very much above the tableland and standing apart. The effort to lower it, the more casual layout of the garage and the far denser planting, I think addressed to some degree the concerns of it being not part of the landscape.
I'm sorry if I didn't pick up, but what is the plant material, the new cluster in the island between the Circle Drive? What is that plant material?
Yeah, so if maybe I can go to some, I have some pictures of the site. Let me go to those, just to kind of paint the tone. So off to the right, you can see it's very dense, and in the back it's very dense. And then as we pan to the left side, the same thing. So Bill Vance had mentioned to me he likes the quality of being able to go through the trees like you're going through a forest. And then that's after reading the staff's report and learning that, you know, there's going to be replacements associated. The intention here was that this would be kind of a reestablishment of a woodland type quality.
What is the material? What is the?
Oh, you know, it would probably a combination of oaks and maples and hickories, things more native that you would find in the woodlands along the ravines. And you know, we can create more of a suburban element with a serpentine lawn, a graceful serpentine lawn as a foreground and surrounding it, but underneath it could be a combination of sedges and ferns and things that you would find in a high quality woodland. So it's just a way to, and we can play with that a little bit to create some vistas through that woodland that creates and evokes like it had been there for generations.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, while we're looking at this slide, looks like the majority of the plant material in the front is in the public right-of-way. Is there any concern with that, with utilities, or is that appropriate?
I will just note that staff has not seen this plan before. This is the first time that we've seen this. I believe it's in response to some of the comments in the staff report.
That's correct.
So the arborist has not looked at it. The engineering department has not looked at it.
Okay. If we go back to the prior plan, we presented a very open. If you look at the at that island in the front, there's just a series of currently there's 4 shade trees, one of which is already dead, and that's where we're proposing to put the driveway apron on the left. So right now it's pretty, in that plan it was very open, and then we received feedback that, you know, that there's a need for replacement trees, and as you can see on the photos that I illustrated earlier, the site is heavily wooded around the perimeter. So I just thought that may be an opportunity for discussion to possibly restore that, and maybe it's something that's toned down a little bit. We pull everything back from the public right of way, and it's more in that interior space, but it's something that we thought could be a viable alternative for providing, you know, to addressing the concerns of the community with having a home that they felt was too exposed on that lot.
So most of the people, I think, when they drive down Walden are coming from the west and going east.
Correct.
You don't feel that there's any concern with that view from the west driveway of seeing that garage? You got the one specimen tree in there, but I mean, that's really your main view driving that street.
So this particular plan, I don't know if you can tell, but the trees at the upper left, those are serrated edges, and that's our symbol for evergreen trees. So that'd be a combination of either spruce or arborvitaes, like I illustrated in that other photo of the Vance's current home. The difference being that what they have at their current home is more in a line as a formal hedge. Here we're trying to evoke the naturalistic quality of the adjacent land. So it's a irregular grouping of evergreens that, I mean, even in the dead of winter, I mean, that's going to be pretty solid, you know, a few years into it once those grow a little bit.
Okay. This house is just under 5,200 square feet under bulk, but it's all on one floor, and we don't have that condition very often. Most of the time it's two-story, so it's a really large footprint. My question to you is, what is the width of it? It seems like it's about 145 feet wide or 150, somewhere in that range. Does that sound about right?
Off the top of my head, it is 50, I believe it's about 125, yeah. Let's see, 18, 36, 46. No, it's a little under 100. If you're not counting the garage.
Well, I would count the garage.
Okay, so I would then add another 30 feet, so I'd call it 125 feet.
I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Bob?
I do. I have a lot, actually. I'm kind of confused with what's being presented, and I'll tell you why. Go back to the picture of the White House. Okay, so I'm looking at that house and I'm saying, that doesn't look so bad. And I'm looking at the packet, and the packet shows the facade materials being wood, clapboard siding, and wood. You guys are saying tonight you want brick. So when I reviewed this, looking at the packet, I was looking at wood, but I didn't see this picture. So I was looking at your plans, didn't see this picture, and nothing made sense to me. Then when you showed me this picture, and I said to myself, that doesn't look so bad, I counted the lights in the windows. And if you notice, the lights in those windows, there's 5 lights on the 2 wings. 2 windows, 5 lights each. But in your plans that were submitted, there's 8, which means that window goes like into the bushes on the ground.
Correct.
Okay, so wait, hold on, let me finish. You don't have to retort. I'm just showing my concerns and why I'm concerned. The submittals are not matching up for me, and that's the difficulty. I really like the idea of putting that screen in the parkway. I think that's a great idea because it'll protect the neighbors. But again, like I said in the last time, you're trying to jam this early classical revival house onto Walden Lane, which is a historical street, with nothing in the area matches it. And as my colleague said, the house is 125 feet wide. There's no house anywhere in that area that's that wide. So I'm more than willing to work with you and try to come to a solution to this, even with this early classical revival concept, but your submittals have to match up. And in saying that, I guess what I'm trying to find out is, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you're trying to respond to us quickly, which is great. But in trying to respond to us quickly, things are getting mixed up. Does that sound right?
Well, that's correct. I mean, we were on the October docket. We showed the clapboard version to the Vances, and they really were not happy with it. We also had a meeting with the Lake Forest staff. They made comments. That was only a week ago. So I I apologize for the lack of coordination. We're really trying to address everyone's concerns.
It's a lot. I have sympathy for you because it is a lot. So, did you get a chance to read the staff report at all?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so in there, one of the things the staff was, and I agree with them, was more detailed drawings. And I can tell you by looking at this white house, it really the mass kind of shrinks, but the plants make it seem huge. So I think what I'm missing is maybe a colored elevation with potentially even a model. If you could come up with a model so we could see what it looks like, because the massing is so large and the style of the house is so incompatible with the neighborhood, it's very difficult for me to kind of get past it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. We unfortunately made this change after the renderer who's on the East Coast left for vacation. We were expecting to have the new rendering today, and like all those bad news at 4:30, it comes and we just had to present this. In terms of the model, because of the complexity of the topography, that would entail quite an elaborate feat at the moment. So we were hoping to use renderings and 3D imagery to explain it. Since the overall massing of the house is quite simple, as an H, that part I think is fairly comprehensible in plan.
I guess my last point or question is, would you consider trying to tie the architecture of the garage into the architecture of the house? Instead of making it distinct.
I think we would have no choice but to do that if we turn the garage to face the street. None of us were crazy about that, but that would be the logical next version. I hate to present something that ultimately the owners really don't want. So I feel like it's wasting everyone's time. So would I consider it? Yes. If we went back to the garage being parallel with the left-hand wing, we get back to the egress issues.
Well, I'm not discouraging an angular garage. What I'm encouraging is that the architecture of the garage structure matches the architecture of the house.
Okay. Yeah, of course we would consider that. We were really trying to take an approach where the garage was an outbuilding, but we would certainly consider making it more compatible with the architecture of the house.
And I do appreciate the fact that you drop the house down and make it more along the topography. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Fred?
Yes. Let me say, first of all, I'm very familiar with the site. I live 2 houses to the east on Walden Lane for the last 25 years. And I go up and down Walden Lane several times each day, so I'm very familiar with what the elevations are and the views are and so on. Already was commented that most of the traffic is coming from the west. Actually, all of the traffic is coming from the west because the bridge, the second bridge is one-way. First bridge also, because of the width of the bridge, you can't come from the east.
Yeah.
So basically, all arrival is coming from the west, and going to the west is exiting travel. And so the very first thing that I'm concerned about, and I have a number of concerns here, is that the garage is really the most prominent view, even though it's angled to reduce it from the front elevation. It is going to be seen first, and because of it's almost essentially a head-on view of the garage as your first view. So all of the elevations that feature the house and the concerns for its features and symmetry and so on, it's the second thing you find out about. First thing you're going to find out about is the garage. And as you know, we tend to favor not showing garages to the street in Lake Forest. That's been sort of a constant principle wherever possible, is not to make garage doors the first impression of a home. So that's one issue, but then I think it's tied in with a second one. I don't think the geometry of the garage presently works with the discipline and geometry of the house, classical form and symmetrical as it is, and the garage is clearly forced into the position it is, just as an attempt to get cars into it, and not because we thought, or it was considered to be a good form to go with this house. It's not a good form to go with the house, in addition to its other problems. And the next, a couple of other things, I'm just leading to what a variety of things might tend to lead towards. Namely, I think the orientation of the house as it is doesn't really take advantage of the property to its maximum. Namely, there's a whole lot of property up to the north, going northeast, that is essentially, frankly, if it was allowed, you could sell it because you're not using it, you're not seeing it. The living space is 25 feet from the next property line. That could be done in a city lot in Chicago. You've got a magnificent piece of land in Lake Forest, and the living space is tucked over there. And what's on the side with the ravine, which is where the great views are, you have the master bedroom, which is occupied at night when you can't see it, and then the bulk of the rest of it is closets and bathrooms, and shower, and so on.
This
they
is
don't
the
take
library.
advantage.
It's really
Yeah, the
sort of
library
main
is
living
down at the bottom, living room rather, that's the living area, I believe, at the bottom. Yes, it has that, but the 2/3 or more of the east wing doesn't benefit from the ravine, and the space that would benefit is over there tucked in between the garage and the property line. Whereas you've got a great views up to the northeast that are all basically ignored. So one, if you know, as an architect, I would suggest exploring something, and that would be rotating the plan. And by the way, this is to find out if the plan can work on the site. So I'm not convinced that it can, but what we would, I think, would be worth exploring to see if it can work would be to rotate it parallel to the west property line, so that the house is the first impression when you're arriving coming down Walden Lane, and then attempt to get the garage on the east side, but in a combined geometry with the house, not as something splaying off from it, which you would need to do because of the setbacks. The ravine setbacks would require that anyway. Then regarding just the massing of the house, I think you've got an uphill struggle trying to do a classical house with some majestic presentation with a one-story volume. I think you're starting off with a liability to begin with. Doesn't have significant mass to it, so it's a little bit hard to be grand. And what I think we're seeing at the entry is that the entry portico or entryway canopy has got the most majestic features with its columns, but it's not arriving to anything. You're coming to columns are going to take you into something, but you don't come into anything. And the little mass that's above it, which is over the entry hall, really, in the elevation, to me, has a commercial quality about it. It's something like a restaurant does when they want you to think there's a big space inside. So they make a roof that suggests there's a space, but there really isn't a big space inside. And it's not a big roof. So, the sequence of arrival is coming to some somewhat majestic columns that have nothing beyond it to arrive to, visually or otherwise.
Is that it?
Those are my thoughts.
Okay. Let me take the last comment first, which is that upon arrival, I wouldn't have made this any larger. I think that it's the right size. You enter into this round entry foyer, which I believe is quite grand, and you have a very open view to the courtyard through the French doors with side lights. So I would say the arrival is quite spectacular, highlighted by this fountain in the middle and, of course, the view to the woods beyond. Let me go to the first comment. The site is difficult. If we could have had a rear access drive or something like that, I certainly would have rotated the house more. The problem is we can't put a drive very well along a steep slope setback. So that pinned the garage to this side. Now, if the garage, if the whole mass did rotate facing more to be perpendicular to the street or parallel with the long axis, we would no longer have access for the garage. So I guess if this house were built in 1850, we would certainly have rotated it and addressed the ravine a little bit more. But the 21st century, we have both automobiles and we have accessibility issues that are going to become more and more apparent in designs to come. So the one-story aspect, I think, is the wave of the future. And does it present problems with reconciling with traditional forms? Yes. I mean, we felt, with the research we did, we felt we were kind of hemmed into two classical styles, and we worked within those frameworks. The comment about seeing the garage first is very much on our minds, and Rob, I think, has done a wonderful job in terms of providing a lot of screening to this dimension, and the meandering nature of the road is, this isn't perfectly in line with the geometry of the road, but nothing is. This is a meandering street, so, you know, by the time you get to here, you're rotated all the way around to the other side. So I don't, the informality of the street, I think, supported the informality of the siting. I do think we do take advantage of the ravine, as this is a major living area, and by having the large courtyard, the diagonal views are afforded from the family room and kitchen, as well as the master and the library. I think I go back to that. I think this is actually a beautiful entry sequence of entering into the dome space and having an immediate view to this wonderful courtyard. So I hear your comments, and we've been thinking about a lot of them, and that's just how we chose to address it.
Well, I probably didn't make myself clear. What you've said, I don't disagree with. The sequence is very nice. Come into an entry and have the courtyard and the landscape beyond. That's excellent. What I was referring to are the dimensions and massing of the sequence of those spaces, and particularly the elevation that, when I say you're not arriving to anything, there's just a little hat beyond the entry portico. little hip roof.
The small hip roof element. Yeah.
And inside, when you look at the section, which your section shows what the dimensions are, it's slightly more than a normal space. It's not a significant grand space, and it probably can't be, given that this is a one-story house. Those are built-in problems. But the built-in problems are giving you an unsatisfactory result. And so I'm trying to reach with you to see if it can be made satisfactory.
Okay, I appreciate that. You're correct, the dome does not necessitate the full height that was projected beyond it. The full height was there due to the earlier balustrades wanting to die into a solid form, and then once we took those off, we had the other issue, which was the railing coming from the balcony and not wanting to just dead end them, and then the roof starts. So that was the rationale for it, and we also didn't want to introduce a flat roof. The pyramidal shape is not necessary for the dome, but I didn't think a flat roof was appropriate either.
One last comment. I mean, with respect to rotating and the garage on the other side, I wouldn't rule it out until it had been looked at. And after it's been looked at, I might agree with you that that doesn't work either. But then we say we don't have a workable solution. Trying to help you find one.
When I left the staff meeting last week, I was desperate for a solution. I stood on that site, I had the site plan out, and I just said, well, what's the shape that the site is and what fits on it. And, it's basically an L or an F or whatever, but it doesn't meet the client's desire to have that symmetrical facade. It doesn't create the inner courtyard that they really, that was their initial idea. That was their concept. And I thought it was a great idea. It's going to be a wonderful space. But in just having the site dictate the form did not afford any of those features that they wanted. So I've definitely wrestled with it.
Is that it, Fred? Thank you. Good evening. Picking up on Fred's point about the traffic coming in from the west along the street, that I'm not even sure traffic, as was pointed out, can even come in from the east. When you take that into consideration and you're approaching the house, it does leave you with the sense that the house is sort of turning its shoulder to you as you're coming in. Had you looked at any alternatives where you rotated it even a little bit clockwise, a couple of degrees, so that it is facing more the direction that someone who was in all likelihood going to be approaching the house?
We certainly looked at it. We have rotated this house. We've flipped it. Our greatest problems are the ravine, steep slope setback, and the triangular nature of the site, and the fact that there's a chokehold right in the center. So every time we rotated it pushed the garage and therefore the turn-in closer and closer to the property line. So we've got about 15 versions of this house rotating in various forms. This was the compromise that we came up with. As you see, it's hitting all the side yard setbacks.
Well, one thought, just to lay it out, is if you did rotate it a few degrees, there are alternatives to how you position that garage to help. I do agree that if the garage were perpendicular to the house, now you've only exacerbated the width of the house. And recognizing that if you maybe angled it forward against the house, you still benefit from shortening that distance. You do make the garage doors more presentable to the front of the house, but if you are able to rotate the house a few degrees, I'm thinking that with landscaping, maybe you could hide that. And maybe that would allow you to be less a prisoner to the garage, just to think about. I do think it's important to say, I think you have made great strides since what you last presented to us, and I don't want that to get lost here. I think that I would like to see what the renderings look like in the materials and the colors that you're proposing. I think the brick would be nice. I think the limestone materials as the accents to the windows would be nice. I like losing the gutters. I don't have, or not the gutter, the shutters. I am wrestling with the idea of the stucco above the brick. I think that if the brick were to extend through the roof line, that would be allowing you to minimize yet another material. So I'd like you to explore that, and if you're showing us some alternatives, I'd like to see what that might look like.
Okay.
The roof feature above the front door, because it is not really serving a purpose to get you more ceiling height in your foyer or whatnot, I really find that as a distraction along the plane of the elevation, and I'd love to see what that looks like just with it being eliminated. I understand that the purpose of your having the railings gives you that terminal point, but I also think you can get away with having a flat canopy over the front door, and you don't necessarily need the railings. So in my eyes, it would be in keeping with the style that you're now designing the garage in, and not adding yet another element to the house. To your point about the black, unfortunately, these black line renderings don't do a lot of things justice, and I recognize that. The dental molding that you're showing around the facade, it seems heavy relative to the facade, but again, that might be whitewashed in actuality. But again, I think that your rendering, showing the building materials and all that will help us appreciate what you're trying to achieve more. My last question is the windows above the east and west wings. Are those visible into a vaulted ceiling, or are they really just ornamental into
They're
attic
in
space?
the attic space, like a traditional home.
Okay. Well, if that wasn't enough for you, I do ask anyone else on the board any other questions or comments for the petitioner. Okay. Hearing none, I would like to invite anyone who might be in attendance who would like to address anything with the petitioner.
Could I make one more quick comment,
Yeah.
please? Since the conversation was, there was a lot of focus about the garage orientation and clearly looking at the plan and not having a full context of the adjacent land, to the left, those darker circles, those are all evergreens. And on this particular engineering tree survey plan, these are shown uniformly at a very small scale, but they're very large. Running all along that western property line is a 6-foot high fence, and the neighbors, I don't know if we can take that into consideration, but typically, as a landscape architect, I look at borrowed spaces and how the landscape can relate to that. There really is a significant barrier that's there. I'd like to go back to one photo that may illustrate it, and then I would request that next time, Mr. Moyer, you're there every day, so if you could take another look at this and look at the density. I guess it really doesn't depict what I was hoping to, but on that left side, it's very dense, and the relationship of, there's some stakes. Can you point to where the garage would be based on the stakes? So it's going to be behind that area. So that, in addition to plant material and having a solid fence that extends almost to the road and continues to the west, I would request just another look be taken in the field to see if you really think that'll still be as much of a visual impact versus what we see on the plan, which looks like it may be, but in reality, I think it really isn't. Thank you.
I think the concern isn't really that as much as it is when you get to the driveway and you look down the driveway, what you see is the garage. But I agree with you, as you're coming, there is a lot of screening to the west, but when you get to the driveway and you look to the left, you have a clear view of the garage.
You think even if there's a tree located between that strategic tree between the garage and the home, because the home projects with the wing.
There was a conscious effort to move these down a bit so that there wasn't a straight shot like that, so that the view corridor was more towards the house as you're approaching this direction. So that you actually have this.
If you're going to speak, if you could come to the microphone, just so we.
Oh, sorry. There was a conscious choice made to have the curb cut further down so that it didn't afford this direct view corridor. So as you're driving, you're approaching the house rather than the garage, and that there's an actual turn back towards the garage. So we felt like this little area sort of blocked the continuous view from standing on the street to the garage. We're certainly cognitive of the issue, and we're addressing it.
Okay, so there was no comment from anyone in attendance, so with that, any other discussion among the board or questions for staff or the petitioner?
I've got some comments for the board. We're not trying to be difficult. It's not our charge here. Our charge is, however, to keep our finger on the pulse of the community aesthetics and the finish of the character of this home as it relates to the neighborhood and the community at large. And the garage is one issue. Frankly, it's contrived. and that's an issue, and it's contrived because of your significant restrictions regarding the home's design, its layout, and its siting on a lovely, spectacular, natural setting that frankly doesn't allow this design, or at least this scale, or this massing and this layout. It's forced, and you're challenged by it, and therefore we're challenged in its compatibility. So, my opinion, you'll come back with the rendering and the color studies, which we have to have. We need to be more informed to make informed decisions here. And you may tweak the garage, and the landscape plan certainly addresses it, but in my opinion, this is the classic round peg in a square hole. It just challenged. And I'm concerned with that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could too, just to follow up.
Yeah.
I agree 100%, and I made the comments last time regarding it. We've got standards that we have to follow. There's 5 basic ones, pretty much what my colleague was talking about in a general level is the first standard, which is the site plan. And again, this residence, although beautiful, don't get me wrong, I mean, the interior is great, I like the concepts, wrong property. And that's the problem, because it doesn't fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. And if you look at all our standards, pretty much the last sentence of every single standard fits in with the surrounding neighborhood. So you've got problems with the site plan standard, you've got problems with the second standard, which is elevations, you've got problems with the standard number 4, which is the textures and the materials, and then you get standard 5, which is the overall site layout. And I really wish this property was 4 times the size, because then your client would have a great time with it. But because you're trying to put this structure into this tight hole, I would really encourage you to think about another type of structure. That's it.
All right, any other guidance to put forward in a motion?
I would like to, I just feel it seems forced, and you're pushing it on every setback, on the east, on the south, on the west, and it's tight, and it's forcing about 50% of your landscaping out into the public right-of-way. And I just feel like it is a beautiful site, and I'm sure you could build a beautiful home there. I just feel like the parameters that you set forth aren't going to work on this lot. It makes it really challenging, and that's why everybody's struggling with it.
All right, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to
Any other-
continue. Yeah, I'll move to continue the petition based upon the comments from the board today, as well as the recommendations within the staff report for today's meeting.
Any other discussion? Okay, do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. For what that's worth, it's a challenge, so. Thank you. Okay, back to where we left off would be the consideration of a request for approval of additions and alterations to the existing residence at 171 Stone Avenue. If whoever is representing the petitioner could please identify themselves, and if there's any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest you want to discuss. Hearing none, welcome.
Thank you very much. Adam Lyons, architect. Good evening, Board. Thank you this evening for the opportunity to present the proposed renovations to the home located at 171 East Stone Avenue on behalf of LK Homes. The neighborhood at this property, as you can see, is in a small section of town, south part of the city, in the R1 zoning district, bordered by 41 to the west and Wesley Road running northwest to the north of the property. this specific area consists of lots of 9,750 square feet and up in the R1 district. Homes along Stone Avenue and in the neighborhood are all located primarily towards the front of the lots with a relatively even and consistent street line. The home here at 171 East Stone, the property that we're working with, is one of the smallest of the homes on the street in terms of scale. The property, the parcel at hand, is 12,768 square feet. Again, very normal for the neighborhood. The existing front wall of the house, you can see, there's our 40-foot building line. The front of the house is just 3 feet beyond that line. The home itself comprises a footprint of just over 1,300 square feet, which is just a fraction of that 12,768. This is a neighborhood typified by more traditional 1960s, 1970s builder-style homes. The homes portray a mix of exterior materials, massings, colors, and building forms. From the exterior, this is the 171 Stone residence. There are some critically awkward features which need some correction. On the second floor, first floor, garage facing the road here, you can see a 36-inch deep eave overhang soffit, if you will, which is drastically out of scale with the home. The low-pitched roofs calculate out to about approximately 3.5 to 12. Again, quite out of scale with the home. Most prominently and significant is along the front, there exists a second floor cantilever, and you can see the relationship of our first floor to the second floor. This cantilever creates a very top-heavy and awkward sort of a feeling, very uncomfortable. Plan-wise, within this 1,300 square feet, there exists some dysfunctionalities as well. The entire first floor is comprised of a living room to one side, the full depth of approximately 22 feet. Off to one side, there's a front office, kitchen off to the rear with a small breakfast area, and a powder room off to the center, vertical stairway in the center. We believe this sunroom, which was a later addition, was perhaps utilized as a family room. And then a two-car garage remains accessed through the kitchen. Upstairs, in its entirety, there are 3 bedrooms, all 3 bedrooms accessed off somewhat of an L-shaped hall and a small bathroom with a shower only. The rear of the home has an abundance of closet space, which we think does a detriment to the plan because this is probably the best facade where you'd want to introduce as much natural light as possible. So in continuing on with the design and what we're going to do, we're turning towards the new vision for our home. In this, research what we found to be key features of this scale of home in the colonial revival style and provide these precedent examples. This style of home is typified by moderately steeply pitched roofs, which tend to parallel each other for the most part. Almost all had some type of a portico feature which would draw one to the entry of the home itself. Very, very common was the sense of symmetry, which would almost always play a key role with the front door at the middle, flanked by windows to either side. This replicates what we have with our home as a starting point. This home also has the traditional pent feature, which is a roof massing, shed roof if you will, running the length of the facade. This adds relief and breaks up the massing, that transition between the first and the second floor. Additionally, one would also find very common dormers located on the roof, either of a gable or a hipped roof. Either is acceptable, we believe. a colonial revival home with an attached garage is portrayed here, would almost always have this second mass of the garage as a step-down version of the principal structure. We find also consistent with the style are the utilization of brick chimneys supporting masonry wood-burning fireplaces. This particular example of a colonial revival home probably best replicates or portrays our vision for the home. Excuse me. This particular example has the step-down garage as a secondary massing garage here, entry portico on the front. You can see a little glimpse of their brick chimney on the opposite side, dormers over the garage. Again, we think this is quite a good example of features that one would find in a traditional colonial revival structure. Now, dealing with our home and its proposed additions, we've tried to maintain a sensitivity to the scale of the home, simplicity, so as again to stay consistent with both the style and the neighborhood homes. The revised and improved first floor plan consists of a more of a formal functional arrangement of spaces. Traditional foyer flanked by a dining room to one side, living room to the other. Central hallway leads way to the family room in the back of the home, breakfast area, kitchen, all with views of the back of the house. Adjacent to the kitchen and to the garage, you'd access that through a mudroom. Again, this comes out approximately 17 feet from the rear of the home. On the second floor, this would be a composition of a total of 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Additionally, we would utilize parts of the lower roof forms to create dormer elements on the front of the garage, off to the centered over the garage door below. Additionally, a roof balcony is provided over part of the kitchen area off of the master bedroom. From the exterior, its new vision, if you will, again, would utilize the pent across the front. We've now introduced a portico feature consistent with the style. It is equally important is the new roof, more steeply pitched roof elements. Again, this roof paralleling the primary roof, and dormer elements again introduced. To the west, we would have this consistent parallel roof lines. These both face the road, beyond which is our massing to the on the east side of the home. This is kind of part of the structure that's beyond part of the first floor addition. To this area is the mudroom with the balcony to soften the composition. From the rear then, as viewed from the south, we would have the extent of the rear addition of the home, with this being, of course, the more of the prominent features. But again, we're playing up the symmetry in our balance of windows, some of our ornamentation with the balustrade across the deck is also used to soften the composition. Additionally, we're utilizing a pergola feature over the patio. And then lastly, to the east, we leave the existing structure here, which is on the front part of the property, relatively intact, with the exception, of course, of creating a more steeply pitched roof. The addition is stepped back so as to make this a secondary part of the composition, while a brick chimney stands proud of that facade. Not to be overlooked is, of course, the site landscaping, which we've paid attention to in trying to come up with landscape natural ways to enhance the home, provide a softness to the entry passageway, the entry sequence into the front of the home, plantings around the rear of the home, along the patio. As a response to staff's comments, along this west property line, we'd like to propose some evergreen trees, some arborvitae perhaps, as additional screening. So in conclusion, to wrap this up, our proposed vision for the home is really what you see here. We believe that this is a composition which is most true for this scale of home to the colonial revival style. The additions that are proposed are outside of the property's required setback lines, results in a home with a height of just 27 feet 7 inches. Our limit is 35 feet, which would be substantially higher. Lastly, the home has an area of 2,949 square feet, which is approximately 4.4% under the maximum bulk for the zoning district. And with that, I hope the board perceives the information in the light that we've presented here and finds in favor of the proposed improvements. I'd like to entertain any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Peter?
I guess my first question is what the outside of the house, the siding, is that wood or is it?
Wood siding, yes, wood lap, cedar siding, probably a pre-stained material.
Okay, and then, so gray asphalt roofing?
Yes, architectural asphalt, and that's down here.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. We'll come back to staff comments.
And the materials for the windows?
We're proposing fiberglass windows with interior and exterior grills applied.
That's it for
Insulated
me.
glass, of course.
Great. Kathy and Kate, sorry to steal your moment.
That's okay,
Any
thank
guidance
you.
would be welcome.
Just a couple quick comments. This is considered a partial demolition. There is quite a bit of work being proposed, but it does appear to be less than 50% of the existing structure, as well as modifications and additions to the existing home. This is not an architecturally significant house. It is a product of its time, so the roof overhang and all of that is very typical of its date of construction. The proposed modifications appear to meet the design guidelines. High quality natural materials that are appropriate for the neighborhood are proposed. The arborist had recommended that screening be enhanced along the east property line. I just wanted to clarify that. But we don't have any major concerns. It is an upgrade to the existing home. And all the proposed changes do appear to be appropriate, so we are recommending approval of the petition.
Thank you, Kate. All right, with that, Tim.
Thank you. On the east side of the house, you have a chimney,
Yes.
but it's not showing on the elevation in the front. You can't see it?
Yeah, so that, because of the fact that, so here's the front of the home, there's our pen feature. This facade is stepped back so that the face of this chimney actually just about lines up with that facade. So no, from the front elevation, it wouldn't be a visible appurtenance, if you will.
Okay. The materials you've got all right here. Okay. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Ross.
So the rendering is representative of the color palette, intended
sir.
color palette?
Yes, it is.
Garage door is appropriately identified in the rendering as well?
Yes, it is, with the exception of the panel of lights, and this is only a function of the renderer trying to convert a 7-foot high door to an 8-foot door. That would be a sectional overhead door, vision lights in the top, as is shown here, but that rendering would place the windows probably a foot higher than they appear, okay? Either a Clopay or a CHI overhead door, wood exterior would be utilized.
What is the front stoop material?
It's existing concrete now, and we're going to try to salvage or repurpose the existing stoop if possible. Otherwise, we would go to a pavers on a concrete slab.
Thank you.
Is that it?
I don't have any questions.
Robert?
In the staff report, they were talking about the lighting plan and having downlights to protect the neighbors from extra glare.
Yes.
Have you thought about how, because I noticed, it seems like the ones in your renderings are going to light outward and not downward.
Right. As far as the selected style, we, for any outside glass of the fixtures, we'd propose to frost them to again, comply with the city's ordinance on lighting.
And then the other issue was, I might be wrong, but I think you said you were talking about screening landscape on the west side, but I know in the staff report they were talking
Okay,
about the east
so
side.
I apologize, east side.
It's the east side, okay, good.
Yeah.
That's all I have, thanks.
No, there's, thank you.
Is that it?
Well, I think this is very, very nicely done. Really, really nice job. The scale is, of course, consistent with the neighborhood. Great improvement over the existing building, a great transformation. And I have no criticisms of this at all. I think it's really well done.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, great, thank you. I do actually have some questions. I think it's a beautiful plan. It's really more points of clarification. Your front elevation is depicting two separate windows. Looking at your floor plan, you're showing one large walk-in closet with one window. And if you could clarify what your elevation is supposed to.
So first floor or second floor, I'm sorry?
Actually, what we have in our packet, Kathy, is showing a single dormer with a walk-in closet.
At one point, a single dormer was considered, correct?
Yes,
Over
yes.
the garage.
We
So
had
those
worked-
may have been from that.
So if that's a
So
previous
could you show your
version-
second floor plan again, just to,
Yes.
so this is your second floor plan?
This is correct with the two dormers, not the single.
Okay. Do you have any further detail that is going around the windows of those dormers?
What, as far as a blown-up enhancement, no, I don't. They would be proportioned so as to accept a 2x6 corner cedar trim board, allow room for some grade to show through, and then trim, of course, around the window. We're looking at these as probably being 24-inch by 24-inch sashes for a 24 by 48 total height.
So there's no distance between the edge of the window and the trim?
Well, the window itself has trim.
Sure.
Then there is a space for siding.
Okay, so there will be siding,
Yeah, we would like to see that, I believe. Yeah.
right?
Otherwise, the sides become so massive and heavy, especially with the contrasting trim color to the siding. I think it would render an appearance that would be a little out of scale.
And I'm not disagreeing, it's difficult to discern from the,
Understood.
what you're showing.
Understood. Thank you.
If you could swing around to your southern elevation real quickly. Because of where you've got the roof line, well, and actually now that I'm saying it, I was just looking to see if there's a way to simplify the roof form that still gives you the clearance over the door header without having to do that
The
cutout shed over it.
That was a subject of many variations and many studies. We worked with staff for quite a long time on developing, solving what's going to happen with the roof line. And what we ended up finding was that this was probably the best of what we had evaluated of the different studies that we reviewed. And taking it any further actually started to work to our detriment, almost looking like something that became too contrived and not as natural. This was the happiest medium that we could develop.
Okay. The clapboard is natural wood, correct?
Pardon me?
The board, the siding is a natural
Yes.
wood material?
Yes, it is.
That's all I've got. So anything else for the petitioner or staff? Move us on. Okay.
Well, just one thing. What plant material are you using to screen on the east side?
Lori, do you have a comment?
I met with Mike Lumsky outside and talked about.
Could you please use the microphone? Thanks.
And please identify yourself, Lori.
Hi, Lori Glatley, LK Homes. So I met with Mike out at the site, the city forester, and we discussed the need to have some kind of screening on that side for the neighbor. And so it had originally been his opinion that we should have 2 or 3 evergreens, which is what you see on the landscape plan. My understanding is that upon further review, he thought we might need more screening. So we're open to whatever he thinks. We could possibly work on that in the field with him when we start the landscaping back there, to just be sure that we're providing ample screening for the neighbor that works for everyone. So we could change to arborvitae, do more of a hedge. We could add another evergreen. Very open to whatever he feels we need to put on that side of the house to give the adequate screening.
Thank you.
Anything else for the petitioner or staff? I open the floor up to anyone from the public who's in attendance if you'd like to speak. Great. Good evening. If you could come to the podium and introduce yourself.
I'm Robert Lisk. I live at 914 Valley, so I am the property on the east. And I bought the house last year in July, a cute little house there. I'm essentially accepting a full-size addition to doubling the size of the house from my point of view. Architecturally, hopefully from the front, the columns that you're proposing at 7 feet tall have a proper size diameter just so that they don't look cheesy in front. My biggest problem is when I bought the house in July, what I've quickly found this summer is that I've got a terrible water problem. I happen to be the east end house of a street that drains everything from west to east. So all the water ends up at my property. This property has got a lovely crown on the property off the back, and then it's got a mosquito breeding ground in the backyard. I've already started talking with Green Guard Associates to figure out how to regrade my property, and the biggest obstacle was what to do with the water as it comes from the west, and how to get it to go around the side of the property instead of just making a wet sponge out of the back of my yard. So I'd love to see that there's some consideration given to the grading so that you maintain the water flow on 171 Stone so that it gets the water off the property on their property rather than coming down onto mine. Love to see something done with the mosquito breeding ground, but that may be kind of a difficult thing. As far as screening, I welcome that. I just love, if it ends up being something like a spruce that's going to end up having a 30-foot diameter, then put it 15 feet. I've got a very small backyard, as I'm now seeing from the ribbon that's stretched across the property line. I really don't want to see anything growing and reducing the size of my backyard just to accommodate this. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. Kathy or Kate, would you be kind enough to speak to Mr. Lisk's concern?
We can certainly alert the city engineer, and prior to issuing a permit, make sure that someone from engineering staff goes out and looks at what actions, if any, are appropriate to address the issue. The footprint of the existing house is not being expanded significantly, but certainly we can look at whether any action should be taken. And we can certainly also look at the landscape plan to make sure that the plantings are accommodated on this property.
Terrific, thank you. Would the petitioner like to respond?
Can I add just a couple of quick notes. We are planning on staying at the Crown, as you speak of. So we left things pretty much intact as they were, just as they are on the lot. So we aren't making any change to the grading of the lot in any way, or to the site as it relates to landscape on the property. It is what it has always been and will stay that way. That's the plan right now. And the screening actually was suggested to give privacy for the neighbor, and if the city wants to work with you and you don't want the screening, we could consider doing a fence instead, or if you don't want anything and you want that open. We're reacting to what the city has asked for, because typically in these situations, neighbors want screening of any mass that's put there. So we're very open to working with everyone to make everybody happy with that side. And I'm in real estate, so I know that it's difficult when you have property that you buy that you're unaware of, that you have an issue. There are a lot of issues based on my limited experience. Our last project, there were issues with a neighbor as well, where they had some water problems. I think that area tends to have some low points, maybe, that have naturally created some issues for people. But again, we aren't planning on changing anything that's there, just leaving it as it is. That was the plan right now.
Right. Well, there are any number of ways to skin the cat and making sure that your privacy and views are adequately addressed, and we'll make sure the staff keeps those in mind and the drainage issues as the petition continues. Is there anyone else in attendance who would like to speak? Okay. Hearing none, any other discussion among us? Questions or comments for the petitioner or the board? All right. Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the petition as submitted, with the additional caveat that there is actually 2 dormers above the garage.
Any other discussion or comments?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is consideration of a request for approval of the demolition of the existing single-family residence located at 30 Washington Circle and a replacement residence detached garage, overall site plan, and conceptual landscape plan. Is anybody the board here have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to make us aware of? All right, hearing none. Welcome, and when the petitioner is ready, kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Sam Kang. I'm the architect representing Mr. Gary Pinello, and he's in attendance, so if you have any questions later, you could ask him any questions. Thank you for consideration of the request for approval of demolition of the single-family residence and the detached garage and construction of a replacement residence and a detached garage on the property on 30 Washington Circle. The site is located on Washington Circle, in between these 2 roads, and it's approximately 51 feet wide by 213 feet deep. It's a little over 10,500 square feet. The house was built approximately late 1920s, 1928, I believe. And the garage was added on, detached garage was added on around 1947. I did some research on the house, and after the research, I found no architect of record, and I found no historical significance to the house. And the staff has outlined the 5 criterion for demolition for the existing home, and criterion 1 is the existing structure itself, or it's in relation to its surrounding, does not have special historic architecture, aesthetic, or cultural significance to the community. And there is, like I said, there was no significance to the style of the home. Criteria 2 for demolition was realistic alternatives, including adaptive reuse, do not exist because of nature of cost or work necessary to preserve the structure or to realize any appreciable part of its value. The house does require a lot of work to make it habitable, and the client wishing not to spend too much money into the existing house and spend the money into the new house would like to hopefully get that passed tonight. The structure, criteria 3, the structure is in its present and restored condition is unsuitable for residential or residential compatible use. I did the home inspection myself personally and found very deficient structural elements. The floor is out of level about 1.5 inches at some spots to 2 inches. The foundation was one of the first concrete foundation pour. It's very rough and porous, and it's towards its end of its life stage without major repair work. And so there's a lot of settlement issues, structural movements, and there's a lot of mechanical upgrades that is required, and pretty much would have to be gutted to make it marketable for resale. And so the cost associated for rehabilitating this house would be prohibitive and not a sound investment for the client. So criteria 4, the demolition and/or replacement structure will not adversely impact the value of the property within the neighborhood. I believe will show our new design will actually enhance the neighborhood. And criteria 5, the demolition and/or replacement structure will be compatible with and not adversely impact the neighborhood character, and will show that to be the case. This is the view towards the south of the property, looking at the front entrance, front elevation. This is the view to the west from the street, north and east from the street. This is the existing north elevation, close up, front elevation, and existing south elevation, which is the rear. It's a raised farmhouse, very simple, and not much historical value in the architectural style. This is a close-up of the entrance again, and the detached garage in the back, 1.5 car garage. This is the existing survey showing the location of the existing house and the existing garage. Current elevation, north. This is west elevation, south, east. And this is the current streetscape with the subject home in the middle. The home at the right, on the right side, is a arts and crafts style home, and the home on the left is a Cape Cod style home. And this is our proposed home rendering. You don't have that in the packet. We just got this done. So this consists of clapboard cedar siding pre-finished with cedar trim board, rectangular columns or square columns about 10 by 10, and asphalt architectural roof. So the proposed goal was to fit the home in the existing neighborhood of traditional homes, and the new home size and scale will be compatible with the neighbors using similar building materials that is consistent with historical examples, and landscape to soften the architecture and blend in with existing surrounding. This is the design inspiration we used to develop our home elevation, exterior massing. This is a home in Arlington, Virginia. It's called the Reevesland Farmhouse, built in 1865, just after the war, Civil War. And the farmhouse, character of the farmhouse is a combination of several different styles, including Cape Cod, softbox, and colonial, Greek Revival, Southern Plantation. This one even has some, you can see some Victorian columns on this one, on this porch. Characteristic of a farmhouse is a lot of them typically had functional porches in the front, gable roofs. And next elevation is, these are existing homes near the house. This is a fairly new home. I believe it was built about a year ago. It's right across the street from the subject property. Similar farmhouse type. Another farmhouse with an enclosed porch down the road, and another one here, very similar type of stock homes in the neighborhood, that style. This is the proposed site plan. We're within the setback requirements. Here's the 40-foot setback line, and we're within all the side setback. We are proposing to relocate the garage with a new two-car garage towards the rear, meeting the setback in the back. And the existing house, you can see it in the red outline, is superimposed with the new house, new proposed. This is the floor plan of the house. Front of the house is here, and the somewhat a wraparound porch look. The center foyer, dining, living, and a very open living space in the back. This is the second floor plan. This will be a 4-bedroom house with 3 baths upstairs. This front elevation, north. And this is an overlay with the existing house. This is the west elevation with the overlay of the existing. This is the proposed south elevation, rear of the house. And proposed east elevation. So here's the building section showing the heights. The first floor will be 10 foot, and the second floor will be 8 feet with cathedral ceilings on the second floor ceilings. And the overall height will be 28 feet from the grade. And this is the proposed garage elevation with 2 separate carriage-style doors. And this is the proposed streetscape. Existing tree removal will require to be removing 3 trees on the side of the existing house, and the city arborist already checked it out, and it's in poor condition. So we're proposing to, and it's too close to the existing house. It's growing at an angle, and then there's a little brush tree here that needs to be removed for the new house. So 4 trees will be removed on the site.
If you could bring this to conclusion, if
Okay.
there's anything else you want to make sure to highlight.
Then here's a proposed landscape plan. And we started the grading plan, and the grading plan shows the drainage. We are adding a inlet here for the stormwater collection for the rear part of the yard, connected to the storm, and then natural grading towards the front. That's it.
Thank you very much. Kate and Kathy, any comments for us?
Thank you. This is a request for a full demolition and replacement structure. The existing house is in serious disrepair. It has had a number of code violations over the years. Based on the condition of the home and some later insensitive modifications and changes, it does fully meet the demolition criteria, so staff is recommending approval of the demolition. The replacement structure is a simple design appropriate for the neighborhood. Materials consistent with neighboring homes is proposed and do generally meet the design guidelines. As the petitioner noted, a few trees are proposed for removal. The arborist did look at those. There are no concerns with their removal. So he said everything is fine with that, and some plantings are proposed on the property. But otherwise, we are recommending approval of both the demolition and the replacement structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Fred, how about leading us off?
Yes, I have a question regarding chimney. It kind of jumps out to me that the chimney does not project above the roof very much. And if you just go back to your streetscape slide, which scrolled, there you go. You can see the houses on either side have a much greater projection of the chimney. So one, there's just a visual consistency, but there's, in many cases, local codes require that chimney is a certain dimension, oftentimes 36 inches above a roof for fire safety reasons. I've never seen anybody do a chimney that close to a roof, so I just wonder if, are you being forced to do that by some height limitation?
No, I think this is just because the fireplace is further back. We do make, we do have the clearances required by code, 10-foot, 2-foot rule. And
it's about the fly ash coming out of the chimney itself.
Right.
Landing on the roof.
Yeah. So
typically, they have to be elevated to reduce the exposure to a hazard. And I think visually it would be more successful if it
Sure,
was
we could certainly
projected.
raise it, sure. I think we can raise that up a little bit. But it does meet code right now, the way it's drawn, but we could certainly raise it up for aesthetic reasons.
That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Fred.
Bob? If you go to your front elevation, I have some questions, and you earlier showed a house that was across the street, and their first floor roof related solely to, in essence, where your front door is and you have the 3 windows above it. And then they had some kind of a, I forgot the style, the name of the window, for the windows on the 2 on the right, they bumped out like a bay window. When I looked at this, I looked at the roof line for the first floor, and it seems like it's in the wrong spot. And I don't know if you notice, there's basically 4 openings, but the opening all the way to the right kind of dead ends back into the window. It's kind of a wasted piece of a porch. So my question to you is, have you thought about extending that first floor roof the entire width of the house, one, or limiting it to the left side with the door and the 2 windows to the left, and then putting some kind of a bay window to the right?
I haven't considered that, but that's something.
Go back. What? You see how that house did it?
Right. This
So
one
they
you're talking
limited
about?
the porch to the one side. So I forgot the architectural terminology, but the part of the building that comes forward towards the street.
Sure.
They limited the roof to that.
Right.
And then the part that recessed, they put another architectural ornamentation.
Yeah, I thought about, what I didn't want to do was repeat the neighbor's house, the detailing.
I
So I didn't want to match their detailing and their style. So that's why I chose, and the inspiration was, this has kind of a wraparound porch kind of concept with the gables. So yeah, I think that's a great idea, but I think it'd be too close to our neighbor's style of home, and I didn't want to make it look like we're copying their house. So.
And then if you go to the rear elevation, the rear door, I spent a lot of time as a kid in Chicago. And this reminds me of the back side of my grandmother and my grandfather's house. There was basically a back porch where you walked upstairs through it. And I was curious as to why the door is kind of dead center and not like offset a little bit. Because that's another bump out, right? That part of the building goes
Correct.
back.
It's correct. This portion is bumped out.
Yeah.
And then there's a roof line, a little porch covering
So I was
that.
curious as to why you pin the door all the way to the left?
It's function of the floor layout. This is a mudroom, and there's a mudroom area and a powder room, and then right past that is the kitchen breakfast area. So it was a function of the layout, and it would really reduce our kitchen layout if we enter the center in the center. So
Thanks.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's
Okay. Michael?
Just one question, that house currently has overhead electric?
excuse me.
The house, does it currently have overhead wires to the house?
Correct. Yes,
Would that be buried for the new house?
I believe so. Yes, underground service.
So
Ross?
What is your front porch material?
Cedar columns, and the ceiling will be beadboard, a wood ceiling.
And the deck?
Deck would be bluestone. It'd be bluestone on concrete.
Could you pull up the front elevation, please? Explain, if you would, the relationship of the chimney and the roof. It appears from this elevation that is a gable roof, and yet from the side elevation, there's a confluence of roofs. So you're right. So what is,
This is a shed roof over here to fill in this portion of the house. So if you look in the rear of the house, you see the shed roof right here. And then that's the roof in the front, the gable roof in the front.
did you study the opportunity for continuing that shed or the hip roof all the way through on that elevation?
This roof here?
The one above, yes, the one above it.
Oh, this one here. Yeah, well, the problem is the width of that, this gable would be too wide all the way coming to this corner. It will raise the roof line too high, and I think the element will get too large. I wanted to keep this gable proportions with the front and the side similar in size. And the rear gable in the back, this gable in the rear, they're all similar. This gable goes all the way through to the front in the rear.
Yeah, just having a difficult time grappling with the confluence of roof configurations on that elevation. Also, I think it speaks to Fred's point about the chimney height above the roof. If you were able to carry that hip through, perhaps it would effectively provide a greater distance for the chimney projection above, and I think it would be more elegant from the front elevation, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Jim?
What type of door are you using for the front door?
What type of door?
Is it wood?
Yes, wood door.
It's a wood door.
Solid core wood door. One.
Okay. And the columns are made out of what?
Yes, it'll be wrapped with cedar.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Peter?
No questions for me.
Right. Just a couple questions for clarification. The columns, both at the front and rear door, are those squared off columns or are those rounded?
Those are square columns, 10 by 10s.
On your front elevation, you're showing, at least you're depicting different shingle sizes between the second floor roof and your front porch, and I just wanted to make sure that those are actually intended to be the same size.
I think it's maybe just the way it was printed, it should be all the same.
Okay. The last question concerns the roof plan, where the pitch of the roof is coming and hitting the chimney.
Yes.
Will you be creating something that helps divert rain and snow from,
Yes, we'll do a cricket here. It's not drawn here, depicted here, but there will be a cricket behind the fireplace.
okay, if you could just make sure that
Sure.
gets added to your design. Anything else? Questions for the petitioner or staff?
Well, one other item, I think it's probably just a drawing error, but the second floor plan, which shows the roof of the porch canopy, the dimensions are not the same left and right. In other words, at the bottom of the sheet, there you go. The bottom of the sheet, it's 8 inches more. I just scaled it wider, that is, from building to eave, than it is at the top, which would mean that the eave is lower at the bottom end than it is at top. And we know it's not a sloping roof, so I think it's probably just a drawing error.
Correct, I believe so too, yeah. I have to fix that.
And it's easily corrected. It's just
Sure.
move the line.
Right, exactly.
But right now, it would show a sloping porch.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred. Anything else? Right. With that, is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the petitioner or the board? If you would be kind enough to come to the podium and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. I'm Dan Siebold, 560 Ivy Court. Property I live at shares a backyard almost, very close. I'll try to be brief here. One general comment I wanted to make. In principle, I have no problems with the bigger home on the property. I just want to say that outdoor lighting, whenever homes are rebuilt, and even in the case of the school, that the Barat property that was refurbished, there's a tendency to install outdoor fixtures, light fixtures, and then kind of have very bright light and kind of light up the neighborhood. But some of us don't like lighting that much. We like subtle lighting. That's just a general comment. I'm wondering, I believe right now this is a rental unit, and will it remain a rental unit? The appearance, it does have some nice design elements, and it does have a farmhouse look to it. I'd say that example from Virginia was a little more delicate in the columns in front and that type of thing. I think the back maybe could have an improvement in appearance simply because this is going to be the main entryway because of where the garage is located on the property. So the people who live here are going to see the back. They're going to be entering in the back most often. And my general complaint about this is the amount of concrete or asphalt that's added by moving the garage to the back of the property. And if you look at it, it's like a fourth of this yard is going to be asphalt. And that would be, in terms of runoff and that type of thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Siebold. Kathy or Kate, would you like to address any of Mr. Siebold's concerns?
I'll just mention condition of approval in the staff report that you were just provided does mention a lighting plan being in full compliance with the city's lighting guidelines, so that should minimize the amount of light spillover to neighboring properties.
With respect to the comment about additional asphalt, there's no question locating the garage toward the back of the property does increase the amount of asphalt. The garage is located in compliance with the zoning setbacks. So there's, as long as the drainage on the site works, and a grading and drainage plan will be required and will be reviewed by the city engineer. Given that this is a small lot in a small lot neighborhood, we will assure that the city engineer looks very carefully at the drainage.
Right. Thank you, Kathy. For the petitioner, if there's anything else you'd like to speak to the,
Yeah, we intentionally did not show any wall lights. We are planning on doing recessed lighting on the porches and in the soffit area of the garages so that we minimize those light glares. So, and reason we really wanted to have some more yard space between the garage and the home in the rear. Having the garage currently so close, there's very little minimal width in the yard. So this actually helps yard space usage for the new tenant or new homeowners. This will be for sale, so it will not be a rental unit.
okay. Is it under contract now, or?
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in attendance who'd like to speak? Please come forward.
My name is Laura Ernst, and I live at 34 Washington Circle on the west side of the property. And you mentioned raising the chimney height. So our chimney kind of mirrors that chimney. So will their chimney be higher than ours, or how does that work?
Right now, it's very similar in height.
If you could come to the microphone, please.
It's very similar in height. I'll open the streetscape here. Kind of depicts that. So it's just slightly higher than your existing, but not significantly higher.
So they were proposing making it even higher. So is that going to cause any sort of aesthetic problem when you look at it from the street side?
Is there anything else?
No.
Okay, great. We'll take that into consideration in our discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chairman notes I would offer one more comment on the driveway. An option would be for a portion of the driveway in the backyard to simply be the tire tracks rather than a full width asphalt driveway.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, with that, any other discussion addressing any of the...
Further question. I'm looking at the property on Earth Google, which you had an image of in your presentation. And when we get there, there you go. Whoops. The blow up. What I'm looking at, there's some significant trees that would appear towards the rear of the property. And with respect to the comment from the audience about the garage location back, which was about the amount of asphalt. A question I wanted to raise is whether, when it goes back that far, it's going to impact existing vegetation, which is a very nice feature on the property. Some of it clearly is on the next property, but I don't know if there's, what part of it might be on this property and be impacted.
We are not certain that the city arborist looked at that, but certainly before we issue a permit, we would look to make sure that trees, even if they're on neighboring properties, are not negatively impacted by the construction. So it may result in a requirement to shift that garage forward a little bit if those trees are significant and would be impacted.
Any other questions for staff or the petitioner? I do have one in regard to the impervious surface and certainly the large pad of pavement that would be in front of your garage. Have you considered using pavers for part of that, whereby it might be a dual utility surface, or it could be a patio or something like that when it's not used as a driveway?
Yeah, that would be up to the builder, but that'd be something to consider. I think the impervious areas within the a normal range, but we can consider like driveway strips or other means to reduce that.
Okay. The only other thing to discuss, in terms of the chimney height, there was discussion about raising it. If it's meeting code, visually, I don't have an issue with that height, and if there's any other direction anyone else on this board has, certainly taking into consideration the neighbor's concerns about a house that's already larger than the neighboring property, not compounding on that. Any concern about the chimney height staying where it is?
Oh, well, the issue I raised was the reason many codes require a distance above the roof is fire safety. So.
Right, but I'm saying as long as this is meeting code, that you're not looking to, as long as what's being presented is meeting code, that's
Well,
sufficient.
I actually have, there are two issues. One is streetscape. Other houses, either side, have higher chimneys. And number two, you introduce a code, not a code, but a fire safety issue when there's a reason for the code saying what they say. So if one jurisdiction doesn't have that code, I don't think it opens the door to having the
No,
problem.
my
that
point is
other
being
codes
that
are-
what is drawn is to code, and that is fine. We're not looking to do anything more.
I'm not suggesting as a code violation, I'm suggesting as a life safety or a fire safety issue and a streetscape issue.
Kathy, would you like to
Irrespective
speak?
of whether code is having a problem with it or not.
Can I make a
Since
comment?
this was raised as a concern by the neighbor, I'd love to have this addressed.
Can I make a comment on it? Typically, this would be like your normal view of the house, driving down. This is what you'll see, the fireplace. By increasing the height, you really will not, because the front two-dimensional elevations shows it a certain height, but in reality, you're down here. When you look up, you're not going to even see that fireplace when you look straight on from the house, even if you raised it up 4 feet, because the angle of view is way down here, you're not going to see it. So I don't think raising it will help make that more prominent in the front elevation. I think this really depicts what you will see on the side.
Okay. Anything else to add, Kathy, or?
Only that when the plans come in for permit, we will make sure, I don't know from these plans that we have confirmed that it fully meets code, but we certainly will do that. If there's a visual issue, that we'd ask for direction from the board if we should work to address that issue.
Okay, great. And Fred, if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that is not your intent? That it's not a visual matter?
Actually, I missed it. I missed what Kathy said. I was looking at plans.
That Kathy, that staff was looking for direction, that we're not telling the petitioner we want to see a higher fire, or a higher chimney for the sake of a visually higher chimney. That is not what you were asking.
Well, actually, it was.
Okay.
For 2 reasons. Streetscape, that's higher chimney.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, a lot of discussion on the chimney. With that, any further discussion?
I'm in favor of both the demolition as meeting all the criteria, or the vast
Yeah,
majority.
So the first motion.
Yeah, and then I'm also in favor of the project in the petition. And with one comment that I hope all the petitioners will figure out, is that when you see a 3D color rendering, it helps so much than looking at a 2D stick drawing. Because I was looking at that chimney from the front and thinking it's buried into the house. But now with this picture, you look at it and you say, no, it's not. It's way in the back and it's totally clear of the roof.
Well, let's focus on the first motion.
Move to approve the demolition as requested in the petition.
Any other discussion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion to approve the demolition passes.
I move to approve the petition as submitted for the new construction, subject to all the criteria in the staff report for today's meeting.
I will second that as well.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, terrific, congratulations.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is continued consideration of a request for approval of the demolition of the existing single-family residence located at 854 Everett Road and a replacement residence, attached garage, overall site plan and conceptual landscape plan. Welcome the petitioner to the podium, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you for taking the time to consider our project. We're just
Would you be kind enough to just, oh, I'm sorry, just real quickly, any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest? Great. If you'd be kind enough to introduce yourself.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Farman Senga. I'm an architect. I'm representing Elena. We're just trying to build a new house on 854 West Everett Road. So this project is being considered for a second time because the previous architect has initially proposed to have the existing house partially demolished and rebuilt. And my understanding is that the board recommended the old house to be completely demolished and a new house to be proposed, which is what we're doing right now. Just to give you a little bit of history. Okay, so the house is located on the southwest corner of Everest Road. There's 2 residential property on either side of the property, and there are commercial ones on the further west, on the further east and west. And on the opposite side of the street, you have big houses, 3 stories at least, that I'm pointing out on this picture. Okay, this is a streetscape that gives us a little bit of the scale of the neighboring houses. They're each 1 stories on this front and 2 stories on the rear, ranch houses. The house doesn't have any significant architecture reference to preserve. So based on that and the previous board recommendation, we're suggesting to completely demolish that structure. Okay. And we're proposing a brand new structure that we're going to go into further in a little bit. Okay. For the new style, we're suggesting French eclectic. These are some examples, some reference that guide our design. Okay. And then we're proposing to use materials that are compliant to the city guidelines. Okay. So getting into the building. On the right, that's the existing site plan. On the left, that's the existing site plan, and on the right, that's the proposed site plan. We're respecting all the required setback by the city zoning requirements. Putting the garage on the left, keeping the same driveway location and the same curb cut, and proposing a new construction. We're trying to place. The client wants a 3-car garage. For that purpose, the staff had some concern regarding the ingress and outgress of to the garage. So we did some studies to understand the feasibility of that happening and to demonstrate that it won't be a major issue. We have the 3-car garage, open living space on the first floor, guest bedroom, kitchen. Second floor, living space, bedrooms, and then here's the roof plan. We understood the staff concern as far as the scale of the building, so that's why we're proposing the garage on the left side to not be completely 2-story. And we did few iterations, we had few discussions with the staff, so we brought the scale of the garage down that you can see on the front elevation here. And on the left elevation here, the garage is right here, and then there is the roof to kind of gradually make our way back to the 2nd story. So we're trying to find some balance as far as the scale is concerned on the streetscape. And not have full 2-story, which was the previously proposed design. This is the front elevation.
Is that it?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Kathy and Kate?
Thank Thank you. The board reviewed a petition for this property back in July. The board provided direction that consideration be given to fully demolishing the house rather than working within the constraints of the existing home. So the owner really did go back to the drawing board. A new design team was hired. A new architectural style is now proposed. The selected style and the massing is moving in the right direction as far as a 1.5-story mass, sort of broken up more than what was previously proposed back in July. Staff had, we had outlined some areas of refinement in the staff report, including looking at reducing the scale of the attached garage, looking at different ways of siding it or stepping it down, or considering a linking element to the main mass of the house. We had also called out some concerns with the tower and how it's integrated into the home, as well as looking at consistency in dormer shapes and sizes, as well as simplifying some of the roof forms. But the proposed house, it does conform to all zoning and setbacks. It appears that it's moving in the right direction, stylistically, as well as what's appropriate for that street and streetscape. At this point, we're not quite ready to recommend approval yet. We are looking for the board's direction on the style, the massing, and detailing of the home. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Peter, lead us off.
I think at first blush, I just, you look at that, it's just almost all garage coming, the garage is almost, well, it looks like it's almost half the total volume. And I know having a 3-car garage is a great luxury, but did you at all consider a 2-car garage to kind of simplify it a bit?
Yes, but the client wants a 3-car garage, so we're trying to accommodate the client's needs. And we made sure square footage-wise, code-wise, zoning-wise, we met all the requirements, and yet provide what the client wanted.
Great. And Kate, can you expand upon the concerns that you guys have with the tower?
Based on the plans, it looks like the tower is actually flush or nearly flush with the front facade. Generally, in a French eclectic style, I think some of the examples may have had it, it would project out more. There also appears some complications with the garage being so close to the main mass of the house. There isn't a lot of room for that tower there.
So.
All right. Well, I can see your point.
Right.
It almost seems like it's contrived rather than an architectural detail.
Right, and
So-
this is an example of a tower. If you can see on the picture, we try to stay close to what is shown here as far as how the tower protrudes, right? So if you can see here, it's pretty much, it's really close to what we're trying to do on our design as far as how the tower protrudes. So this is a typical example of the style.
And just one other question. And when you approached the committee in July, I believe it was, the original plan had gates for the driveway. Are they still in the works, or have they been scrapped?
No.
You might not know that, but
No, that plan has been completely scrapped.
Great.
So we're starting from zero.
all right. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Peter. Jim?
To me, the tower looks very forced. I don't know what can be done. It just looks out of place, something with it. The garage doors, they're different from the ones you're showing
The garage doors?
in the elevation that's up there now. It appears to be different than the one.
On the 3D rendering, on the 3D perspective view? Yeah, on that 3D perspective view, you're looking at, we didn't detail that at that time, but this is what we're proposing on the elevation. That would be
The one up on the board.
the one up on the board, yes.
And could you review the materials, please?
The material selection?
Yeah.
Yes. We have actually, I had some over here as well. So this is the brick that we're proposing, and we're proposing limestone as well in the corner. Let me open an elevation here. Limestone on the corner, and this will be the brick, and we're proposing the tower to be stucco.
And the windows?
The windows, I have it over here. Traditional grill patterns.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Ross?
What would you classify the style architecture?
French eclectic.
French eclectic. I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. What color are the windows?
The white.
The white and the gutters?
Yes, the white as well.
And that's your brick and stucco palette?
Yeah, that's the brick and limestone, and stucco will match the same color pattern.
Did I miss a landscape plan?
For the landscape, we do have a landscape plan on the first page. We're removing most of the tree, but we're trying to keep the maple tree, but we understand that one of them, the one closer to the house, will not survive, so we're gonna have to remove it and we'll replant a new one on site.
We probably need some more embellishment on this. Some more detail. The driveway, lacks a integrity, for lack of a better word. It has no grace to it. Right, are you open to, again, I guess that would relate to a full-blown landscape plan as well, but are you willing to consider a driveway embellishment in terms of its adding some gracefulness to it?
Yes, I will be willing to consider it, but here, if you see the scheme that we have as far as driving in and out, right, we're really limited as far as where we can place additional landscape, considering that we have 3-car garages.
The rafter tails on the roof, a number of the roof elements, you have a little curl. That's the intent, correct?
That's the intent, yeah.
Is that typical throughout the home?
Yes, it's typical throughout the home and consistent with the French eclectic style.
And what is the soffit material, the overhang?
Just wood.
Plywood, beadboard, tongue and groove?
So we haven't decided, but I think we're gonna follow the. Plywood. I will consider plywood.
Is it a medium cedar shake roof, or what is the type of cedar?
Wood shingles. For the roof?
Yes.
Yeah, we're using roof wood shingles.
So is it cedar shingles?
Shade, yes.
Shingles or shakes?
Shingles, roof shingles.
So machine cut shingles? Or,
Machine cut shingles, yes.
okay, thank you.
That's it. Michael?
Looking at the driveway, concerned about it appears as if the driveway goes all the way to the front of the building. It doesn't leave you any area for foundation plantings or any kind of landscaping next to the building to soften that. Is that your intent, or do you have an opportunity to do some landscaping next to the foundation?
Yeah, after reviewing the staff recommendation, we're considering pushing the building further out to provide additional landscape in the front of the house. Yes, that's one of the things that we're considering doing.
Then what happens with the link to the garage? Did that become just extend the garage?
No, well, right now at the front of the house, but we can gain additional 5 foot between the first car entrance and the front face of the house. We're considering putting additional landscape there, if that makes sense.
So how much of a planting bed would you have at the?
Yeah, it won't be a lot because we have to, the car have to be able to drive in and out. We have to have enough clearance. So we really don't have a lot of open space there.
So I think that's a concern, because when you take a look at your inspirational images where they have, some sizable plants next to the building, the lower image, where if you only have a 2 or 3 foot strip, that you may not be able to achieve that. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I have some questions and comments, and why don't we go to the front elevation for a second? One of the criteria that we look at is kind of a consistency in the massing and the gables and the dormers, and when I look at this, it appears to me that the 3 most visible dormers are all different dimensions. Now, that might be correct for this particular French eclectic style. I don't know, but it was a problem for the staff and it's a problem for me. Would you be open to trying to solve that to make it just a little more consistent? And the reason I'm saying that is because that also is going to apply to that, the bump out, I don't know if you want to call it a square bay or whatever, to the right of the front door too.
Mm-hmm. I'll be able to, if we consider the one right above the window, the main entrance.
Yes.
The staff recommended to have that removed, but we're trying to provide additional lighting in the corridor when you enter when you get to the 2nd floor. You can see here, right? So we're trying to provide some lights to the corridor. So that was our intent on having that dormer there, right? So what we can do, we can, I could consider making it smaller to be consistent with the other dormers. Actually, if you pay attention, all the dormers are the same size. The one that's highlighted are the only one that are not the same size.
Well, where I get confused is that if you look at the 3 windows in the 3 dormers, they're all different shapes. It looks like one's a rectangle, one's got an arch, and one's a square, or more or less. You follow me on that?
Yes.
Oh, so really my only comment is I want you to take a look at that, try to make it more consistent so they're more equal, balanced. The next question I had was, on this front elevation, have you thought about sliding the garage structure left, like the width of a door, 3, 4, 5 feet?
Yes.
And pushed it back, and then taken that tower and pulled it forward 3, 4, 5 feet, so that the tower actually sticks out of the building, and then the garage goes back. It's gonna, obviously dimensionally you have to figure it out, but you'll make the tower a little more prominent. Have you thought about that?
Yes, we talked about that extensively, actually. We talked about that, but, well, that's something we'll have to work on because it goes with the floor plan and the way everything else is laid out. It's not by accident that it is where it is. So we'll have to work and see how that plays out with the overall scheme of the house, the plans. But I think it's an option that we'll be more than happy to consider.
Because I think this place is gonna look great.
Right.
It really
Yes.
is.
Yes.
It needs to be tweaked a little bit, that's all.
Right, because we're trying to make these new, because if you look at the site plan that I was showing before, none of the houses in that street have gone through any transformation. So we want to be the first to set the right trend for that street.
Okay, then the last one I want to talk about is on the front elevation. Have you thought about reducing, and I don't know how you do this mathematically or geometrically, the massing of the garage itself and the roof? I know you have rooms up there.
Right.
But if you could drop the dimensionality of the garage roof even a little bit, it'll really kind of make the massing less severe. Have you thought about that a little bit? I don't know how you would do it, but I'm just...
Yes, we have, because the key thing here, we're trying to keep the same roof slope consistently throughout the house per the city requirements, right? So if you look at the slope, it's consistent throughout. So if we're changing it on the garage, we'll have to change it everywhere else, which will...
well, not necessarily, but you'd be open to at least looking at that?
I will be open to.
Okay, let's just pick any side of the building. Just go to one side. Just turn it. Let's take another elevation. So that rear elevation on the top, that looks great because it tends to be symmetrical and it's beautiful.
Right.
If you drop down to the bottom, it looks like your dormers are all consistent going across. But then on the bottom right, it seems like you could put another window in there. These are just questions if you thought about it. Put another window on the bottom.
I think, do we have room to provide additional windows? And that was one of the recommendation of the staff on one of the elevation to provide additional windows.
Yeah, if you go to the long elevation, that
Right,
really
yeah.
long wall.
So, yeah.
Can you can on the lower picture? Would you be open to taking a look at that? and
Yes.
Trying to put some more detail into that wall.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Next, yes.
Fred.
Well, I think this is really very refreshing. The overall character of the house is, I think, terrific. And, you know, there are some rough edges that have been commented about, which I'm looking at maybe just a little bit of incompletion of the development of the design, the direction and the overall concept. I think it's just really marvelous. And will be a great improvement of the streetscape of Everett Road.
Yes, that's
when
the
you
goal.
go there and see what's along the road, and this is an improvement to the street environment there, and may set the tone for future
Yes,
houses.
that's the goal.
To be compatible with this house, will have to be nicer houses.
Oh, yes.
Having said that, I'm wondering if some of the areas of incompletion are in fact computer, or, you know, CAD issues or Revit issues in getting lines to connect or getting lines to be there. Like
Right.
The roof, the isometric is showing dormers with some of the lines that define them, but not all the lines that define them. But which is not a significant problem. That's just a drawing technique issue. But where the stair is with the round form, it's more than just drawing technique, because second floor plan actually has the stair not projecting outside the wall. The first floor plan is projecting outside the wall. And the roof plan is having sort of another take on the whole thing, which just means, and by the way, I don't think any one of them are yet successful. In other words, it either needs to be definitely projecting outside the wall, not 4 inches, which could be considered a mistake the contractor made when they were building it. They made it bump out, and you want to assert that it is outside the wall, or it's not outside the wall, and it's within the roof plane, which is the way it's meeting the roof in the front elevation is very attractive. The way that circle or elliptical form is happening on the front elevation, that's very intriguing. But then it leaves us with a problem down below, which is what in the elevation is showing a flat wall that changes materials and has a window at the point of change and no fascia, or maybe it does have a fascia, it's not sure. But to me, I see that as like an unfinished painting.
Right.
The artist has not decided what he's going to do in that place. And so I'm looking at more as incompletion than anything else, I think. And you need to decide in which direction are you going to complete it. Because it's
Yes.
on the border like now, or it's on one side or the other of the border.
Yes, with the client, we've had extensive discussion as far as how to
Right,
locate it
right.
properly.
But terrific direction. I think it's just very, very refreshing. Very nice.
Thank you, Fred. In terms of Fred's comment about where the parapet is hitting the second floor, by my read of that second floor plan, that's hitting the edge of the roof, not the edge of the wall. So I think that addresses your concern about whether it is at what point it's extending away from the house. Actually, sticking to this elevation, looking at the west elevation, I'm unclear looking at the roof plan in this elevation, what exactly is happening with the roof lines in the middle section of that elevation?
It's continuous.
Do you have a pointer you could?
Over here?
Yeah.
It's continuous. This is
No,
just,
no, but going then up to the roof peak, is that all? If you look at your roof plan, it looks like you've got a separate roof line, and I'm just not really clear what's happening there.
On the roof plan, that may explain it a little better. Or here's what happening. This roof is there will be the main roof will be this rectangle here, and then this will be attached to it.
So that line, the line over the center of the garage it should be extending to?
Yes, that is correct. This line will be extended over here to that
Okay.
edge of the.
One of and I think it would be helpful for us to really understand that, because really the elevation that I'm really struggling with is that west elevation. You have a very long, expansive wall with little articulation, and to the extent that's broken up, and that might be adequately broken up by how you've designed that roof, but it's difficult to tell from the materials you presented here. But to Mr. Rita's point about if there's some way you can maybe bump the garage west a few feet, which gives you more room in the front of the house, and that in itself, if you're only bumping the garage west a few feet, could create some opportunities to create that articulation and that elevation that might be attractive and break that up. My final question is, again, sticking to this elevation. If you look at the north wall, your roof line is a much different pitch. And I would really like to see you keeping, again, to the spirit of keeping the same roof pitch around the house. And maybe that means you've got a flat roof at the peak or something like that. But consider some opportunities where you might be able to, again, follow that, the same roof pitch around the house. The last comment I wanted to just clarify is the coins, and they're all natural limestone. Right. I have no other questions or comments for staff or the petitioner or anyone else before we.
I'd just like to piggyback on the notion about modifying the garage. If you look at the west elevation, that is a massive run of brick and roof without breakup, and it's a heavily highly visible elevation from Everett Road heading east. And to my colleague's point, you have plenty of setback ability to the west.
I do.
And no driveway over there, so it's going to serve multiple purposes. Not only will it open up and expand the front elevation and perhaps allow for a more successful tower, which is kind of incongruous with the design. So maybe if you create more of a feature, have more room to do that with, it certainly then can be more successful and compatible. It will provide more spread in the front to accommodate planting bed to soften the front elevation. And as well, it will give you an opportunity by sliding just perhaps the garage element west. It will then give you an opportunity to have an offset to step back on that west elevation I know that that requires redetailing the roof in that area, but it's not that significant of a change from a cost standpoint or a detailing change, but it will make a significant impact aesthetically and functionally through many elevations here.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak? If you'd be kind enough to come up to the podium and introduce yourself, please.
You have the clicker, right? Yes. I don't want to take your thing away. Is it up or down? Okay. My name's Michael Malarkey. I live at 1025 Evergreen Drive, catty corner. I think you have our photo up there to know which. How do you go back?
Or to the slide, or you can use the cursor.
Well, I mean, maybe you can do it, and I'll just walk through it. I'd like to be helpful, be happy if the house was torn down. But what I would go through is the very beginning, is if you look over to the bottom right-hand side, where they have the arrow pointed to, that's my wife and my house. She was here the last time when she had issues around construction, being on the street, etc. I would just like to walk through some of the comments that are inside of here. I think it's ideal to have a new house there. This is not the house. It's not in scale. It's a 20,000 square foot lot, pointing out to our house, which is a 67,000 square foot lot, which has a 3-car garage that's embedded inside the house. The garage protrudes to the front of the street. There's no other house on that street that protrudes like that. It just doesn't fit. The height of the building is higher than the school that's behind it by over 10 feet. It's the wrong height. It's the wrong exterior. I understand French eclectic. The two main things that, and I built a French country and a French provincial home in Lake Forest. You can go look at 1090 Longmeadow. You can look at 1050 West Deer Path. They have the appropriate brick, appropriate outside, the appropriate windows, and setback with the garage inside the homes. So there are examples inside Lake Forest that we can point to that would help the house be successful. The plan originally says 4,000 square feet, 600 square feet for the garage, and it says 784. So it automatically, however you want to accommodate it, it just doesn't fit. Doesn't fit the rest of the street, doesn't fit at the Evergreen Drive area. It's just not the right, somebody has a different look and feel for it, it just doesn't fit. When we look at what's behind it, right? We all know what's behind it because you guys listed it here. And this is where I thank you guys for your service, but I'm going to ask you to do your service. And these are going to be more issues inside the city, okay? This house is a problem. This house has had multiple issues with the City of Lake Forest Police Department, which unfortunately this young woman, or it's not her, but it's her son. Multiple visits by the Lake Forest Police Department throughout the summer, garbage throughout the front of the house, okay? To help you illustrate this,
It's irrelevant.
are you guys aware of the issues?
If you could speak to the points that are pertinent to the board's purview, I would.
The purview is that you're supposed to be standing up for the community residents inside what the city stands for. And to keep the nature and the community of the city where it needs to be. If you look at the news, on September 17th, less than 2 weeks ago, a man was arrested.
Okay, again, I ask you to focus on building matters. This is not.
This is a building matter because the destruction of the building and focus on building a new building is at issue. And that issue is we don't have a resident that it says here in your file, your building file, sir.
I'm going to ask
that it says
if
that
you
she's
could-
a resident, but she's not there. It's
If
a
you could
rental
wrap
property.
up.
I'll wrap it up.
Thank you.
The gentleman was arrested
Okay,
on September
sir,
17th.
enough.
No, I'm
Sir,
not.
no, that's
the last
not-
piece is then today
Sir,
the police department had
Mr.
to show
Malarkey,
up because
Mr.
the same
Malarkey.
individual
Mr. Malarkey, your
walked
time-
into the school property
Malarkey.
and the principal had to call the police department again.
Your time is done. Thank you. You're
So,
excused.
I'm not excused because I would like to be able to prove the point.
Your point's
Is
not
my point
observed
taken and on
here.
the record?
You're excused.
Well, it should be on the record that I don't agree with what's going on. There's issues with the house and the residents. And in what you guys presented to the
Mr.
residents, it says she's a resident there. and
Mr.
she's not.
Malarkey, thank you.
Not the right venue for this.
All right. Kathy, I'm not sure really what is there to respond to, but certainly the staff has the opportunity to respond, so.
I think the only response I can say is that it sounds like the city is responding to a non-Building Review Board issue in an appropriate way. What's before the Building Review Board is the question of demolition of the house, appropriateness of the structure, massing materials, functionality of the driveway, consistency with the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Kathy. Would the petitioner like to respond?
We're meeting all the code zoning requirements. We're here trying to accommodate the village, the community. So I feel that we're fulfilling our duty.
All right. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance who would like to speak up? Okay, seeing none, thank you. I bring this back to the board for any other discussion, questions, comments for the petitioner or staff?
Just one more comment. I'd like to see, as was mentioned by some of my colleagues, more landscaping in front, a meandering of the driveway if it's at all possible. I don't see how, but as Russ had said.
That and softening of the garage, offsetting the tower reconsiderations, more applicability to true country, eclectic. Like to take another look at this.
3D rendering.
We're getting closer.
Did I hear 3D rendering or?
I think it's made great strides since we saw this last, and it's still some refinement to do, and some further detailings and rendering, if you could do that as well. But it's heading in the right direction, I think.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
It's going to be fun.
All right, with that, do I hear a motion for the demolition?
We should
continue this?
Well, I don't think we're supposed to do the demo.
Can we
without the
approve the
construction.
demolition, or do we have to?
You can certainly, you have given a sense that you support the demolition, but the motions should be done concurrently.
Okay.
So if you're going to continue it, I think it's clear, and maybe you can just summarize that the demolition seems to be acceptable.
Okay, great, thank you.
So all right, I'll move to continue the petition based upon the comments and concerns and stuff that has been raised in the meeting today. And then to note within the motion that it appears that the board is comfortable with the demolition meeting the criteria, but we're going to delay that vote until the final vote.
Any other discussion? Okay, with that,
I second.
Second.
All approved?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Look forward to seeing your progress. Thank you. Thank you. All right, last but not least, this is an introduction of a petition that's been presented in front of the Plan Commission, Kathy, if I believe. The McKinley Road redevelopment concept plans will be presented for a new multifamily building proposed as a replacement for two office buildings located at 721 and 725 McKinley Road. This area is a portion of a larger redevelopment site currently under consideration by the Plan Commission. Peter, if you'd be kind of, yeah, thank you. Any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself because I've done work with Mr. Eltonian and Mr. Whitmer, so.
No
With
objection.
that, I'd like to.
Great, thank you, Michael. Have a good night.
And
Anything else?
Chairman notes, maybe I'll just make a few comments if there are no other conflicts of interest.
Certainly.
Just as background, the Plan Commission has been looking at the McKinley Road redevelopment area. They have, I believe, discussed that area now on 3 occasions. They expressed interest in having the Building Review Board begin to look at the building. The Plan Commission next week will again see an overall site plan. And the Plan Commission next week will consider approval of just a first phase, one building of the ultimate development that's occurring. So this is before you tonight, really for introduction, to give you an overall sense. But the board's role is really going to be looking at the buildings, looking at appropriateness of building architecture. This is a very important area. We did provide you with some recommendations that came out of the Plan Commission's discussion to date. Appropriate massing, appropriate streetscape, treatment of mechanicals, architectural detailing, exterior materials. So just wanted to provide that setting for the discussion.
Thank you, Kathy. Mr. Whitmer, if you'd introduce yourself and.
I'm Peter Whitmer, and I have an architectural firm here in town. We, as Kathy explained, we've been working with the Planning Commission and actually working with the city probably over a year on this project. And happy to show you what we have to date and look forward to your comments and the general public's comments too. This site, everybody probably knows, it's got two office buildings on a two-story brick. Interesting that they never put any windows toward Market Square. I thought that was kind of a interesting development, but we're obviously want to take those buildings down. This is just an overall sketch of the entire site, and conceptually we've looked at road locations, connections with the library, open space, its relationship to the streets extensively. And really, I think one of the points that I'd make here is that the circulation in the street is the open space, and so we really are really concerned about that. In terms of this is an urban building, it's very close to the CBD. It's zoned for office. We all think it should be residential. Makes sense to be residential east of the tracks, and we really think that the ability to walk through the site, to get to the library, to walk through the site on the north-south axis, the open spaces are really important. And I would just characterize that as that we absolutely wanted a place that when you go walk your dog, you want to walk through this. And so, having lived here a while and spent a lot of time in the CBD, walking your dog's an important aspect of the CBD, and we want to make sure that we create more space to do that. And also, too, look forward to having more residents in the CBD to basically make goods and services work better. The first floor plan, this is the site. So our one idea about the buildings and all the buildings here is that they would all be individual buildings with similar materials but different in character, so that it appears and will be built over time, and that it's more in the historic neighborhoods, that it wasn't one big subdivision done by all one same person, that they're actually different buildings done in different times and have different characters, which we feel like gives the streetscape a more authentic historic feel to it. This is the first floor, and this is the site we're looking at. It's 116 feet wide and 264 deep. The site is 116 feet wide. We basically wanted the front of the building to align with the main face of the building, the 333 Westminster building. Its bays project out. I'll show you this in another slide. Beyond that, so we've aligned our building with that, with our balconies that project out in the front to the west. And then we've increased the side yard setback. It's 5 feet, and we've made it 15 feet, really to create more space and outdoor spaces for the first floor units. 35 feet off the back street, the east, which we have our entrance into the parking garage. It's a full parking garage under the building. And then on the south, we have our streetscape and our road that goes down through there, which is both vehicular and pedestrian street. Just sort of general overview of the whole CBD. There's key civic buildings and there's background buildings. And so, I think the obvious ones are the church, the library, Market Square, and the train station. And the facades around Market Square is the key elements and key buildings. And then background buildings. And so we we really looked at a lot of buildings around the country, downtown Chicago, New York, East Coast, masonry, historic buildings built, and not only for their aesthetics of the idea of the pilaster and the spandrel and how the roofscapes work, but also different things that they're doing with these buildings. And one of the important elements, as you can see in this one, is really making the roof as an outdoor space, and creating space on top of the roof is an important idea. And the idea of having a base in how the streetscape and how the street is handled. If we look in Lake Forest, these buildings are kind of come in three different, kind of categorized our CBD buildings in three different ways. One is modern era, so these are all sort of buildings built in the 50s and 60s, which are sort of box construction, and then a little bit more modern time in the 80s and how they responded with their materials and how they handled the sides and the front of the building. And then more recent is buildings that were built either to literally copy Market Square or work with a historic language of masonry buildings to complement the square. So then the third and last, or the fourth category being historic buildings built in the perimeter of Market Square, and their detailing and how they fit together. The streetscape along that is evolving, and we want to look at it from basically from Deer Path over to Westminster, and with the church being its main element, the library being sort of the void space between that you can see to it, the house that's part of the church structure, the single-story office building, which would be a future building site for us, our building, and then the 333 building at the edge. Just quick sketches. These are actually overlays over computer drawings so that they're very accurate, but just sort of the ideas is that this is the upper one is when you're driving north on McKinley and how you see the piece and the house and how our building would be behind that. And then the other one being looks at the stop sign of Westminster and McKinley looking south. And you see these bays projected, and this is the face of the building. We've aligned our building with this, but each of these hold their own, and they're different, and they have similar materials, but they each have their own architectural character. These are, and I apologize just because the scale of the whole thing is pretty small, but I think you get the idea that really what we're relating to is the scale of the 333 building. And we're relating to that, and that we match it. Here you can see these two buildings next to each other, not only in fenestration, but in the height. We've tried to reduce the overall height of the building by actually pushing it down from the grade of McKinley by a couple feet, so that we have some relationship there. Here you can see the church and the void and its relationships there. The bottom one is an interesting one where it has a train station, Market Square, and then has the Lantern building and the Walgreens building as sort of bookends to Market Square, and I think that's really what we're relating to with our design. These are those two buildings. Then I think it's important to look at the scale and the relationship of the window openings to the overall mass, and I think what we're doing here is relating those to that's the Walgreens building, that's the old Fifth Third Bank building there. And you can see the relationship of the size and scale of the overall, plus the openings and its relationship too. I think the other thing that we've really tried to do with the design is have a base, a body and a top, which all these buildings have some resemblance to. And we've done that with articulation of different materials, also articulating the center of the elevation that way too. The other piece is, these are just sections through the buildings and its relationship to 333 building, where we show the parapets, where we're going to not only have outdoor space on the roof, but we're also going to hide our mechanical equipment behind those parapets. We do have these penthouses, which our stairs come up into so that we can access the roof, which are basically the same heights as the chimneys of the 333 building. We wanted to look at these and what does this mean in terms of the visuals from the parking lot of the train station. So the top view is if you're north of the train station looking back at the site. And what we thought was really interesting and really be great to see some green on the roof so that you see some vegetation, and there's obviously some occupancy as part of that, and just enhances the overall character of the building. The same from the south, looking at our building, that you'll see the vegetation that we'll have, well, planters up there and small trees and some other things up there for the upper level units. The floor plans are somewhat interesting. There's basically in the first floor, we have 2 affordable units in the pink here on either side, flanked with the other 3 units. And then the next 2 floors are really units that are 2 on the ends and then 2 that go straight through. We do have a unique situation where we have elevators that open up into our units directly so that we don't really have corridors on the second floor, and that we get light into all 3 sides, and you have units that have light in the south and light in to the north. We've tried to locate all the bedrooms toward the north and all the living spaces basically to the south. One is for light, but also for the building, the 333 building, so that we don't have noisy things, and that is more on the south side. And our views are mainly to the south too. The roof plan you can see here is the white areas are mechanical areas, and then they have some terraces and these are the stairwells that come up to those areas. Each space has their own individual stairwell up into the roof. These are the overall building elevations. What we've tried to do is really make this a four-sided building so that all the elevations are articulated. We've really looked at these buildings in pretty heavy detail in terms of the pilaster and how the verticality's formed, and then also the base, the middle, and the top. This is just some details of this. So this shows these. The base being the cast stone with the brick verticals, and then the cornice and the parapet at the top. The spandrel panels between the glass will be these gray cast panels that are below the windows. The windows will be a black clad window, double hung window with a mutton. Just some more details of the panel and its articulation. We've tried to make the articulated of the wall so it's basically about 5 inches from the cornice will project, and then that there's a fair amount of articulation in this panel. You can see this in the section. And then this is a rendering. On the long end of the building, we've basically broken it into 2 pieces so that it has this void space in the center. So this is indicated, these balconies that look to the south. So we have the one building on this side and the other building on the other has these cast stone pilasters at the end that turns the corner, some railing details, just a few more panel details. And then this will be the front elevation. This shows the base of stone and some balconies that are cantilevered off, which have some protection of the terraces below. And this is the part that faces Market Square. And then at the top in the center, this shows some details of the roof and how that piece goes through. It's a lot to do in 10 minutes. I thought I could make it. But this is a view from the top of the roof, and I think how the building meets the sky, and we do have some ornamentation in terms of the urns that are sort of mark the center of the symmetry of the elevation, and how this you can see diagrammatically. You can see Market Square back there, and this open railing so that you have some transparency through. When you're sitting, you can see through that. These are we basically have 2 buildings we're looking at, and they'll have 2 separate addresses, and each will have their individual front door. So the front door has a cast stone surround with flanked with lights, and then a little balcony that has a little protection above. The brick we've studied and looked at quite a bit. This is the brick panel. The one on the left here is one that we like, which has a little more historic look to it with some the cast down base. We were really concerned about the corner and how that's relationship. So that was another study that we did for the elevation. Next time we'll bring the full scale piece in for you to look at. This is the east building, which shows the entrance piece. The articulation at the roof, the stone, and then the breaking up of that elevation. You know, we were fortunate enough to do a project north of town at Regents Row, and you know, we learned a lot on that. I mean, I thought we were very happy with the way that turned out. But I think the streetscape and how one walks down the street, the space between the road, the drive, the little space between the boxwood and the landscape, and then the landscape between the window in there is all very important in terms of how one walks along there, the visual protection of the people who are living in here, all that. And I think, you know, we've been fortunate to sort of understand what that is and how we not only get this parkway tree to grow and thrive, because you need to have enough soil in there to make that work. But also, you know, I've learned a lot in terms of 10 years that's been going on. We've had to replant a lot of stuff. So, you know, what works, what doesn't work in terms of, you know, dogs going along there and all those things. So I think, you know, in this project, we can learn from those pieces and really design it with, not only it looks beautiful when it first is installed, but it has a lasting power. You know, I mean, I think one of the things is that, you know, I think you look at this building, you say, it's a big box. Well, I think two things I would say to respond to that. One is, this is in the CBD. There's a lot of big boxes here in town. It's how you articulate that box is important. The other is that we really want to build a building that is permanent, that is, you know, that is acoustically separation. You know, we've basically concrete floors that separate floors. The roof is concrete, poured concrete. The walls are not stud walls. They're, you know, rigid insulation, concrete back piece. So we want something that is going to be here for another, you know, 75 years. You know, you don't have to retuck point this thing every, you know, 10 years. And we're, you know, I've been fortunate enough to not only build some buildings, but also be on the maintenance side of things. You know, so reskinning buildings and reskinning condominium buildings and problems that come over time, you know, we learn about. So it's not only the initial idea about this building, it's also the durability and the permanence of it in time.
Peter, not to cut you off, but if you could
That's it.
wrap it up. Okay.
All right, landscape, I think we talked about lighting, really important in terms of this, and I think we've studied it and looked at it, and we'll come back with some ideas there. So that's it.
Great, thank you guys. Kathy, are we following normal procedures here, or being that this is more of a presentation at this point?
It's 9:45, so I don't think you need to talk about this for an hour. This is an introduction. It's really intended to get you thinking about this property, to get you out to the area and really looking at the buildings around it. But I think tonight, if there are certain, if you have questions, I don't think we need to feel that they all need to be answered tonight, but questions, areas where you want more detail, areas where you have concerns, information that you want brought back, I think that would be most helpful, so that when we come back next month, the plans can be further developed in ways that you want to see them developed. Certainly direction on what you've heard on the overall concept for this building.
Are we inviting public testimony tonight?
Yes,
Okay.
I think you should invite public testimony.
Anything else? Great, thank you, Kathy. With that, Fred, would you like to start off? Any questions or comments for staff or petitioner?
Yes, I guess, well, just, I think you nailed a central issue when you said it's a big box, and you recognize that, but you're placing a lot of emphasis on the articulation of the box as to making it successful. I think there's perhaps a limit to how much articulation will warm up a box. I mean, there are limits to it. And with respect to that, there presently is not a lot of historical reference, there are some, obviously, you've spoken of it, But just as an initial reaction, I accept the urban context that leads you in the direction you're going in terms of essentially the density of the mass, et cetera, and the urban character is appropriate to where it's located. However, the extent to which there is ability to warm it up is largely limited by the box itself. In other words, there aren't articulations in mass or in elements that are beyond surface, and the placement of some ornaments at spandrel locations and so on. So the historical reference I get a stronger feeling about connecting this building to is more in the commercial building, manufacturing buildings you find in historic districts, which are built for economy of construction and the repetition of materials and so on. We have a lot of that here. It comes with an economical apartment plan, a condo plan that repeats itself, and this is good for development. But it also leads to repetition without relief on the outside. So, and part of what then I think is a next, a framework for considering the whole thing is the landscape plan. How the sketch that's on the screen right now, would suggest that you'll only have glimpses of pieces of the building, perhaps, as opposed to here's that whole thing. I can't get a good feeling for that I can see the sketch, but I don't see a plan, and perhaps that's coming, that would show us the amount of landscaping, green space, and how it fits within its setting. I think that's a next important piece of information. That's what I'll have right now.
I think it's going to be a great project. I've been waiting for those two pieces of property to be bulldozed, because that whole corridor, when it gets built up like this, it's just going to be beautiful. That's it. We'll just wait to see what you guys come up with. It's great.
There you go. Russ.
Well, I concur. I mean, it's a long time coming. Devil's in the details. It's important for you guys, longstanding residents, as well as for the community. But for clarity, just so I better understand the game plan here, this is a three-phase project with first phase being 721.
There's two addresses. It's actually 721 and 725, so they're the two buildings and the two addresses, and we'd like to transpose those to the new project. So then the next phase, and quite frankly, what we've done with the Plan Commission is really work out the circulation and really understand that. So the second phase presumably would be the 7-Eleven, which would be the single-story office building, basically that site. With our thoughts would be the last would be then the one toward the rear.
And currently, that's a single-family home towards the rear?
No, that's the Historical Society.
That's the historic building.
Yeah, so that's been, it's city-owned property, and I think, we've spent a lot of time working with the city and trying to understand what's good for everybody, really. In the library, the church, all the players, and us, in this community.
So that's phase 3.
I would think, although, we could build the one behind too. I mean, we have a limitation on the 7-Eleven building. There's tenants in there that have some pretty long leases that we've got to honor and we'd like to keep in. So, if somehow we could do the one behind that.
The one behind is what you're reflecting is a 2-story condo with a single family?
Yes, the thought process right now with the Plan Commission is to put a single-family lot on the Westminster side.
Why?
Really to fill in the missing tooth of that streetscape and to give it some buffer of the multifamily behind it.
And just to be clear, the city council has not made a decision about the city property, so that is all in flux. That's why this is a phase 1 standalone, but the city would have to go through its standard process to offer property for sale, and the council has indicated an interest in making sure that in this overall development that the library is afforded some additional space on the north side.
So to that end, I mean, this is just a discussion. So So we're talking here, has it been considered moving the two-story condo to the north, perhaps centering it on that piece of property and eliminating the single-family piece?
The Plan Commission is, and we have looked at that possibility, and we are working with them on that idea. Although I can tell you that there are limitations on doing that. There's downsides to that piece too.
I'm sure. I mean, you have it aligned currently, the north end of that building aligns with the north side of the Phase 1 building, but it just seems to me it's contrived to force that single-family piece in there, and especially if one criteria is to provide some breathing room to the library corridor, moving that building north. Anyway, that's a phase down the road.
I would say all those issues are what we're studying with Plan Commission.
But I'm sure the goal here is to master plan this, and then, so you're working off of a canvas throughout time that makes sense, as opposed to, zigzagging.
I think the goal is to put the roads in the right place.
Yes.
And then, to shift the things around is that. And so that's why I think we have the roads in the right place. And I think there's probably massaging on the other pieces for sure.
Is the goal as well for all phases to be compatible architecturally from a material standpoint, a palette standpoint?
Yeah,
contextual?
I think, just as Market Square and the surrounding areas are made of brick and stone and that, and I think it makes sense to do that. I do want them to be individual pieces, in that the programs of each individual building could be different. Right now, I think this is what makes sense on our first one. In the future, a different product might give us a different fenestration. But I think that the overall idea is that it's all compatible in terms of the materials of each of those buildings.
Is there any grade change?
There is. There's about 4 or 5 feet from McKinley to the street and to the east.
So with that in mind, might there then be an opportunity to provide a little bit of a tiered element to Phase 1 with respect to the jump up the roof? And
the difficulty is that we're for the building itself is that the garage and all those pieces all want to be sort of the same level, and so we have units that spread that, so the floor levels really need to be the same. And I think we do, we're over a few feet over from the street, and we want to try to, keep it as low as we can. And we really want to keep it, if you look at Westminster Gardens, it's very similar in the height. It's identical, and it sticks out of the ground further. Actually, their grade changes a little bit more than ours because the alley slopes back down toward Westminster, so their building is actually going to be a little bit higher. We do want to be cognizant and try to keep the whole thing down. And so, our thoughts are to keep it consistent.
But it might break up the massing. We've heard that comment from staff report as well as historical. Did you have a chance to read the historic, the Preservation Foundation's comments?
I did get a chance to read that. Yes, I did. I don't know that I digested it or necessarily. I mean, I understand what they're saying.
Is it feasible to slightly pitch the floor plate of the parking garage?
It is within a degree. The problem is that we need the deepest part at the door because of the handicapped accessibility to get the 8-foot door in to get a handicap van in. So that makes it difficult. It wants to slope the wrong way, basically, is the problem.
You mentioned the demising walls. I didn't catch what the material is.
In the demising walls between the units, it's a stud wall, airspace, a concrete block, an airspace, and a stud wall.
CMUs?
CMU between the units. Then it's poured in place concrete.
I've heard of this stuff, autoclave concrete.
We're looking at that. Actually, the acoustics of concrete block are actually better.
Sure.
Yeah. So, you know, we could look at using it. We actually have some problems with their STC rating. We would have to have 2 layers of autoclave concrete versus the CMU.
One
CMU, yeah.
And last, the cut stone, I mean, have you considered cut stone in lieu of the fabricated stone?
No, I mean, we have in terms of that, but we really think that the cast stone is probably a better solution in terms of the overall quality and the overall durability of it. We just, you know, limestone itself is a pretty, you know, it deteriorates. And so when we have salt against it and all that, it deteriorates over time and quicker than people really realize. You know, we've had some experience with that and, see it. So we think that the durability of the cast stone will be better.
The aesthetics, though, is so appealing with the...
I don't know. I think we can bring the sample in and you can take a look at it and you can see it. We've worked a lot on terms of the quality of the cast stone, and so we feel it's pretty high quality. And historically, people have used, in the 1920s, they used a lot of actually poured concrete for their bases and for the limestones. When you look at some of the headers and sill details, at least in some buildings that we've used. So I think that's what we'd like to propose.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. Jim?
Thank you. I too think it'll be a great anchor to the east and really fill in some gaps there that have been blatant. What have you considered what the massing will be to the east to affect the homes east of the project?
Is to say, we've always discussed it will be a lower building than what this is because there is a stepping down of single family houses to the east from this. So it would not be as tall as this building. And I think, it would be 2 stories and a roof is what we're saying. And it makes sense. And we have to be sensitive to that. That's why that's going to dictate a different answer than what this building is. It's not going to be a box, basically, is what... I think that is, but those are the things we'll grapple with in terms of how we design those.
And the lighting on that side.
Yeah, I think all those things. Outdoor spaces, how do they get handled, lighting, all that.
Okay, are you going to have? I'm sure in the future you will, but a model 3D, something we can possibly look at. We've computer generated basically
CBD in terms of modeling. And so, we have a lot of perspectives in the computer. We hadn't planned on building a model. I guess we could in terms of massing, that might be helpful for people. We spent a lot of time with it in terms of looking at the, these, even though this drawing looks very hand sketched, as I say, it's all computer modeled, and so it's very accurate, and it's rendered with a hand. But I think we could look at whatever means we need to describe what we're trying to do.
And these are all condos. There's no rentals, just condos.
Correct. They're all condos.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Is that it?
And I don't know if this is our purview, but obviously by building this, we're going to increase the residential density in this area. Are you guys satisfied with the amount of parking that's going to be offered?
Yeah, we have, I think 32 spaces underneath. So with 11 units or 11 market units and 2 affordable, it gives a minimum of, well, if you give a parking space to each of the affordable, then it gives 3 spaces to the big units and 2 spaces for the little units with big storage spaces. So I think 3 parking spaces for condos pretty unique. And so we're comfortable that we have parking there. I think the other piece of this is where do our friends come to park, and how does that get done? And I think the streetscape that we're creating on the south provides parking for that, which is real logical. In terms of, okay, I'm just parking on the street and going in and seeing this. And then in the east alley, we have about 4 spaces there for, some utility type parking too. So we feel very comfortable with the parking.
Great. Well, in closing, I think it is a worthwhile and great, could be potentially a game changer in terms of the downtown area. So we look forward to seeing more next meeting.
Thank you.
And Peter, it's a great plan. I do have a couple questions and comments, actually regarding the parking. If you have that much extra parking to the point of where guests could park, is there an opportunity where you might be able to create guest parking in your garage and avoid having to take up spaces on the street?
We've had a lot of discussions with potential owners, and really what's come up is that there has been the situation where my daughter needs to park her car for when she's at school, and where is she going to park? And so I think those kinds of situations are absolutely easy. I think it's more difficult when we say open to have the garage, to give them some sort of code to go in their guest parking. So and it's somewhat confusing, but these are Lake Forest residents who are looking to move here, and I think as you can see, almost every residential project they say, we need a 3-car garage. Well, it's because they have 2 cars and then somebody else wants to come. So I think what we're trying to do is not give them all to the buyers, but to have some open, so when somebody has some circumstance like that, there's an extra space down there.
Well, again, that's outside of our scope, but I appreciate the education.
It does. It affects the plan. I think parking does affect what the aesthetics are.
I would say literally the only comment I have is that when you look at, say, whether it's the north elevation or the south elevation, that is a long expanse, and you have certainly made an effort to break that up. But for instance, Fred had brought up situations where you might have an old warehouse or factory down in the city that's been converted. Well, this isn't the West Loop. So I would be, those are, especially the south elevation is a very visible elevation. And I certainly, as you think through that elevation to the extent you can articulate or maybe mix up compositions that might make it look like it were 2 buildings instead of 1 long building, would just be things that I would personally like to see addressed. And but other than that, it's a long overdue redevelopment of the site that it will be welcomed in the community. So,
thank you.
Anything else before we open up to anyone in attendance? Okay, great. With that, is anybody in attendance who would like to address the board or the petitioner? Please come up. And again, due to the late hour, and we really ask if you could respect the 5-minute time limit and be as brief as you can.
Okay. Dan Sebald, 560 Ivy Court. So I'm going to go through here and comment on notes I made. Part of this is going to be architectural, part of it's going to be land use. Let me just begin by saying I thought the opening part here with the guidelines from the Plan Commission was very well done, good summary. And I think that this proposal doesn't even come close to meeting the guidelines. And I'll come back to that. But I just want to start out by saying 3 stories isn't a problem for me. I noticed the other day that there's an elevation change from the train depot across the street of about 7 feet. So I think 3 stories on McKinley isn't something that really concerns me. Okay, I think someone from the commission mentioned property 697, how that's going to look compared to the other buildings in terms of massing. So 697, I don't know who owns that, but if they want to consider building height there, that's fine with me if they want to heighten it. Okay, the building appearance, I agree that with Commissioner Moyer and Commissioner Knowles. It has a very industrial appearance, and I'm fine with industrial in an urban setting. I like the more urban appeal to it, but industrial just is not it. I've worked in industrial buildings in Ravenswood that have been refurbished. I just love them, but this is not, I think, what people are looking for in this area. This is just too valuable. This is where the train depot is. This is where the people who get off the train first see the city. The main problem for me, a non-starter, is and it's listed in the guidelines here, limit curb cuts on McKinley Road. And this proposal effectively puts a new street coming off of McKinley, goes back, goes all the way around. I just don't think that's appropriate. I'd rather see a more urban, continuous look along McKinley. The balconies, balconies can be very nice, but they can also be very unappealing. And these that are proposed here are of low quality. It's just an overhang with some steel on it. I'd like to see some more vision here. Balconies that look nice are stone, might have ivy on it, something that looks very attractive. Balcony here, if I were someone who wanted to live here, I'd rather have a nice bay window. I don't think I'd want to stand or sit out on a balcony with the train going by. It's high volume. There's exhaust from the train. However, I'd like a nice bay window where I could look out, see the snow falling in winter, get that acoustic separation from the train. It'd be a very romantic setting. So more vision. The parking. The parking is outrageous. If you want to own 3 cars, my question is, why do you want to live here? 45 units total for 45 parking spaces for 11 units is just way too much. I was hoping to see people here who want to shun the car, walk, take the train to Chicago, who don't need parking spaces. So the guest parking indoors is a good question. The setback, I wish the city could address the zoning. What is the history of the zoning here? 25 feet seems kind of far to me, being where it's at, so I'd just like to know a little bit about the zoning. That's pretty much it. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Mr. Siebel. I saw another hand. Kathy, maybe we just get through the comments and then address them all at once. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Catherine Lemmer. I'm the new library director. I just had one question, which I've been at all the plan committee meetings and I'm still learning who's responsible for what. But my question to Peter would be, you're talking about a 3-stage kind of development with very little discussion about the other 3 components. I'm very appreciative of the single-family home. I think that respects the thing. But the 2-story building, condo building, and the 3-story condo building, those are still sort of out there yet with not a lot of concept. Is that what I understand you to say? So what are we talking about as far as disruption? Like, do you anticipate that the larger building is a 1-year construction plan and then we're talking about 3 or 5 years? Do you have any kind of idea on that yet for the whole project?
We'll have him address all his comments
Okay,
at once.
sorry.
So if you can just get through your...
I should be talking to you. And then the other question is the access point off of McKinley, is that part of stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 3? That's it.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in attendance who'd like to speak? Good evening.
Ruth Brueggemann, 55 Farnham Lane. I represent the owners of 697 McKinley Road and the church property. I have a couple where our board has a few questions. The biggest question we have is, if this initial building goes through, does this set a precedent, and are there going to be further reviews for the 3-story building that would be adjacent to our property? That's my first question. My second question is, within this review, do we have any setbacks on this, where this building actually, how much distance there is between our building and this 3-story building, which is going to engulf this single-family home that exists there right now? If it is a consideration that you're considering single-family homes on the east, could we also have single-family home consideration and perhaps a 2-story building instead of a 3? Those are our concerns, and we'll be happy to hear what the answers are.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, great. Kathy, I heard a couple things just to run through my tally. Parking was raised, so again, this is not a topic for this board to discern. So if you could address who will be hearing that, access through the site, whether McKinley or back onto Western Avenue. It was what is the existing zoning, both for this property and affecting neighbors, so height, setbacks, things like that, construction timing. That was, I think I captured a lot of what I heard, and certainly if there was anything I missed, we'll come back to that. But
Sure, I'll take a stab at it, and Mr. Whitmer may be able to respond to some. The Plan Commission will be considering parking as part of its look at the overall area. Certainly the concept of or discussion of whether or not there should be on-street parking is something the Plan Commission, we can certainly refer that to them for discussion. The city code does have a parking standard, and I can't recite that off the top of my head, but this project, I believe, may exceed that standard. In discussions to date with the Plan Commission, they wanted to make sure that the buildings will each fully handle the parking demand that they generate. However, they also recognize for any large events, evenings or weekends, we have commuter parking spaces, so we, it's that balance between certainly building enough parking but not overbuilding parking.
The question from the gentleman seated was more on the opposite end of that, which was a more carbon-friendly approach. Less parking, less vehicles, correct? Urban living, vertical living, in town, walk, trains, less carbon footprint.
And the Plan Commission certainly recognized this location lends itself to those who may not want cars, but they also lean the other way with the desire to make sure that this development did provide sufficient parking. So it certainly is a vision. The Plan Commission will be hearing a sustainability plan shortly, and it certainly has some of those concepts, but I think it's that balance, and I'm not sure we're, as a community, at a point where we're ready to restrict parking in developments. Access, there was a question about, the Plan Commission did talk about limiting curb cuts on McKinley Road. This, as proposed, this development actually reduces the number of curb cuts on McKinley Road. Currently, the 3 office buildings each have a curb cut. And what is proposed is one street that will provide access into the site, not only for residents, but also residents of the site, but also for others in the community. Provide, for instance, a different way to get to the library, or a more friendly way to walk to the library if you're coming from the south, from the north. The existing zoning on the property is office zoning. Our office zoning does permit multifamily, But in the office zoning district, it does have a lesser setback than most of our residential zoning districts, but it does not allow construction, for instance, within 5 feet of the property line along the street. I think that might have been the question. Could we move the buildings forward? Again, I think the Plan Commission was interested in seeing the streetscape, the encroachment of the buildings toward the street to really conform with the 333 Westminster building, which this first building as proposed does. Phasing of construction, disruption from construction, we really haven't gotten to that point, but when we do, we certainly will talk about construction routes and establishing a time frame for construction. Everyone wants to see it occur as quickly as possible. Some of the work on demolition of the building is occurring already so that we can, at the front end, perhaps speed that process up. I heard questions about whether the property south of this first building, between the 7-Eleven property, could be considered for single-family residential. In discussions to date, the Plan Commission really has pretty strongly moved in the direction of seeing multifamily along McKinley. They did talk about single-family on Westminster as part of the continuing the streetscape. So they did spend a lot of time talking about that. And the final question I recall is whether, when this building is approved, whether there will be further opportunity for review and public comments of future buildings in this area. The answer is yes.
Thank you, Kathy. Peter, is there anything you'd like to add to what Kathy summarized?
I think she did a pretty good job on most of it.
She sure did.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is absolutely, I think that, this site on a walkability scale, if you plug it in, is like a 99. So, I think that's why people will be attracted to this. Yeah, I think you covered everything. The phasing of this is, a work in progress. This, and I think one is we want to be good neighbors. We're here long term, and we want to make this place a memorable place.
Great, thank you, Peter. All right, bringing it back to the board. Any final questions, comments for the petitioner, or anything you'd like to discuss? Okay, right. Is there a motion to be entertained, Kathy?
You could certainly continue consideration. That never hurts. That will certainly be an indication in the minutes that this was the start of the discussion.
Right.
So move to continue the project until the petitioner wants us to review it again.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? No, great. Well, we will look forward to watching the progress of the project, and good luck with it.
Thank you.
That is our final item of business for the evening. And is there any other business that anyone would like to bring forward? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to dismiss?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.